Please take your seats. Our program will begin in 10 minutes.
Till I get up, time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
Please take your seats. Our program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin.
The race for artificial intelligence supremacy is upon us, fueling growth in infrastructure, investment, and efficiency. In other areas of business, quantum computing is inching closer to commercial use. Robots are entering the workforce.
Hi, Spot!
And everything from cyber threats to deep fakes are more sophisticated. At the same time, Silicon Valley has new allies in Washington, and these voices are shaping policy, influencing capital, and shaking up global relations.
Yes!
A new era is upon us, an era defined by explosive technological innovations, but also profound economic uncertainty.
They charge us, we charge them.
Who will lead the next wave? How will businesses thrive and adapt? And where can technology help push us forward?
Artificial intelligence is the single most important technology force of our time.
The rate and pace of change in the industry, it's like faster than anything we've ever seen.
You got to dream and execute, dream and execute.
At Bloomberg Tech, we bring together the sharpest minds to discuss the opportunities and hazards that come with innovation. Join us as we decode the future.
That does sound fun.
Welcome to Bloomberg Tech.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Emily Chang and Tom Giles.
Good morning and welcome to Bloomberg Tech. We are so excited to have all of you right here in San Francisco.
Thank you all so much for coming. I'm so excited about the day we have ahead of us. So much energy, effort, heart goes into planning this event. How long have we been working on this?
Dawn of time.
A really long time. So it's a lot of work, but also it's one of my favorite days of the year, truly, because where else do you get to see all of these people in one place? We're going to be talking about AI, venture capital, transportation disruptors. How many of you came in an Uber? Okay, wake up. Okay, yes? Yeah. How many of you came in a Waymo? Okay. How many of you are actually at home right now and sent an AI avatar in your place? We got a head start last night. I sat down with Alphabet and Google CEO Sundar Pichai, wide-ranging conversation just about how Google stays influential in the age of AI. That's online. You can check it out there. Tom, you interviewed.
I got to talk to Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth. We had a really wide-ranging conversation about the ways that they are incorporating AI into hardware, his vision for the ways that headsets are going to interact with smartphones, and a whole bunch of other topics.
And he's been there for 20 years.
This is his 20-year anniversary.
I think he's a lifer. And the conversations didn't stop there.
No, it didn't. We wrapped up with a networking exchange with a group of about 100 C-suite executives. It's a group we're calling the Innovators Circle. Many of you are in the room here. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Salesforce for sponsoring last night's event. You would not be surprised to learn that top of mind for many executives right now is artificial intelligence. Today, we're going to crank that conversation up to 11. This is a really critical moment for the technology industry. As you all know, just this morning, hearing about the latest in trade discussions between U.S. President Donald Trump and President Xi, rare earth metals, something that's near and dear to the hearts of many technology companies. This is a moment when hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested in artificial intelligence, specifically chips, data centers, and the businesses, many of which you are affiliated with, that are disrupting the way we work, the way we code, the way we live, and the way we even go on dates.
So I would like to thank our sponsors again. Our presenting sponsors, Invesco QQQ, PwC, Salesforce, Samsung. Our participating sponsor, Personal AI, our contributing sponsor, Fuse. Without these sponsors, we wouldn't be able to have an incredible event like this, so thank you, everyone, for your support. Also, okay, everyone, pull out your phones. We've got a QR code that we want you to scan. Please turn your phones on silent while you're doing that. But this is where you're going to find the agenda. You can download our event app. You can message other attendees here. Maybe you can set up some meetings and have some serendipitous encounters. Our Wi-Fi information is here, and this is where you'll be able to submit questions to our speakers on stage. So we're going to try to get to as many questions of yours as possible. We do want this to feel like a community event, so please submit those questions and we will do our best.
And if you don't already subscribe to Bloomberg News and all of our great technology coverage, today is your lucky day. On this page, you are going to be able to click on a QR code that will enable you to get subscription discounts. Also, if you're enjoying the event, if you want to share thoughts, questions, complaints, please join, engage in the conversation on social media. You can follow our coverage using hashtag Bloomberg Tech and @sign Bloomberg Live.
And we're going to start the morning with a conversation about our own city. How many of you think SF is back? SF is back, baby? We're good? What do we think? Yes? Let's cheer for San Francisco. All right.
They're undecided.
Undecided. All right. Well, Mayor Daniel Lurie is here. I think he's going to try to convince you that, yes, indeed, it is back. He's with our Business Week editor, Brad Stone. Brad and Daniel Lurie, let's take the stage.
Mayor Lurie, welcome to the Bloomberg Tech Summit.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about tech, but let me get your answer to the question that Emily just posed to the audience. Can you say today with any confidence and comfort that San Francisco is indeed back?
Here's what I would say is that we are on the rise. We have a lot of work to do. I am clear-eyed about our challenges. I saw them on the drive-in today. I drop my kids off in the Mission District every morning, and then I usually just go right to City Hall. Today I came down Market Street, got out of the car a couple of times to, talk to people that were struggling on our streets. And so there is no question that for the first time in years, people feel a sense of hope and optimism. More people think we're on the right track than the wrong track. But I'm not here to tell you that we're out of the woods. We have a lot of work to do. But you all are here. Snowflake is across the street doing their conference. Databricks is coming here. OpenAI. I mean, we are the envy of every city in the globe when it comes to business activity. So it's happening, and the buzz is back in San Francisco.
Well, I want to ask you about that because I was recently in Chicago. They would be delighted to have one AI company, and you have them all. You essentially have a straight flush. But I've lived here now for 25 years. I've sort of seen this movie before. How do we make sure that the gains from this coming AI boom are evenly distributed?
Well, I think that's a great point. And so, we just presented our budget, and we are all about creating the conditions for long-term success so that it lifts all boats. And so we're focused on public safety as our #1 priority. The behavioral health crisis on our streets is an issue that is my #2 priority. And then I tell everybody, we are open for business. I want to use technology to create better conditions around permit reform, making it easier for small businesses and big business to do work here in San Francisco, to get more housing built in San Francisco. So we have a family zoning plan that could change the course for housing over the next 30 or 40 years. So our kids, our grandkids can afford to live here in San Francisco. And so we're on our way.
We're going to get into some of those specific issues, but I was reading an article, I think it was in the SF Business Times recently, and it projected that the AI boom could generate, I think it was like 60,000 jobs over the next 5 years. At the same time, I was thinking, this city has gotten into trouble by being so over-indexed in the past to a single industry.
Yep.
So how do we prevent the city of San Francisco's fortunes from rising and falling along with the inevitably cyclical nature of tech?
Well, we've always been known for our arts and culture. So when I talk to CEOs and business leaders, I say, we want you back in San Francisco. We want your conferences here. But we want you to be part of the community. We want you, like Salesforce has done for years, investing in our public schools. OpenAI is investing in arts and culture organizations. So I want those companies investing in that because that's always what's made San Francisco so special. And by the way, we were just named the culinary capital of the country. Our restaurants are second to none in this city. This summer alone, we're going to be the center of the music world. We have Dead & Company, August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
Yeah, but don't promote it because it's sold out already.
It's sold out in about 30 minutes, 60,000 tickets Friday, 60 on Saturday, and 60 on Sunday. The next week, Outside Lands. The next weekend, Zach Bryan. It's going to be an incredible summer in San Francisco, and we are truly evenly divided in terms of, or distributed in terms of what's happening in this city. So AI, healthcare, we have UCSF right here in San Francisco that sometimes goes untalked about, and so it's an exciting time to be in San Francisco.
You have brought your Open for Business message to the business community. You formed the Partnership for San Francisco, the SF Downtown Development Corporation. But talk about this model of using, private funds or philanthropic funds for the city, and how sustainable do we create a dangerous dependency?
Yeah, so those are two good examples. Private-public partnership is always needed. Every city does this. This is not something new. It just hasn't been done to great effect in San Francisco for a while. And it's not about being sustainable. It's about giving us test cases. We had Chris Larson of Ripple just announce a major investment in a real-time intelligence center in San Francisco to make sure that we're using technology to keep San Franciscans safe.
But is that the proper use for private funds?
Yeah, so he gets something up and running, and then the government takes it over. We are trying to build more drug treatment beds, more mental health beds. So we have the private sector contributing close to $40 million to help us with the capital projects, but then government, which it is our responsibility to pay for the ongoing services to keep people treated. But we are facing $1 billion budget deficit here in San Francisco. And so those funds help kickstart something that we're able to continue to pay for in the out years.
I mean, do you think the business community, in particular the tech community, has a responsibility toward the city that was previously unmet?
I think any company, any individual that's had success or is doing business in the city has a responsibility to be part of the community. Much has been made of my background coming from Levi Strauss. That company has been around for 160, 170 years, always part of the community. We have great companies like Gap, Salesforce, OpenAI is getting involved in the company. So yes, companies have a responsibility, but government has a responsibility as well, and there needs to be partnership. And what we did as a city was we took business for granted. And we thought, we can just continue to increase taxes, not deliver clean and safe streets, and they'll stay. Well, guess what? They left. We can't take it for granted anymore. We're not. We're seeing businesses, we're seeing jobs coming back to San Francisco. Coinbase famously left.
They paid to leave.
They paid to leave, and now they're 150,000 square foot lease just a few blocks from here in Mission Rock, which is taking off. Visa, another example of a company that really gets their responsibility to investing back in the community. They're doing a lot around youth homelessness. And so really those executives over there, Ryan and Oliver Jenkins, they get it. And we need more companies like that that will lift all boats.
At the same time, you have to balance the demands or the needs of these companies. You recently allowed Waymos to drive on Market Street, and if any of you are visiting and you haven't taken a Waymo, you should.
It hasn't happened yet.
Okay,
yep.
So it will.
We're in talks with them.
But, there are companies like Uber that cannot access Market Street. They're quite upset about that. So how do you make sure that you don't end up prioritizing the needs of one company versus another?
Well, here's what I'd say. I'm prioritizing the residents of San Francisco. 840,000 people, that's who my customers are. And I want business here because I want them bringing their jobs here. I want them bringing their tax revenue here. And we're going to have conversations. They'll be transparent. They'll be open. We're talking to the leaders of all of these companies. We have talked to Waymo about Market Street, and we're in discussions with them about it. That has not happened yet. And we'll continue to have discussions. I want us to be open for business. I want everybody in the city to know who we're talking to, and we'll be completely transparent about it.
Do you have a plan to get tech workers out of their cloistered office cafeterias and doing their dry cleaning in the city versus, in the workplace?
Well, listen, my job is to create the conditions so people come back to work downtown. We have 35, 36% empty office space downtown. That number is slowly going down. We need it to go more rapidly down. So I'm not focused on the cafeterias. I'm focused on public safety, clean streets, getting people that are struggling with addiction off the streets so that workers want to be back downtown. And when you have workers coming back downtown, and part of creating the conditions, we've created these things called entertainment zones. On 2nd Street, just a couple blocks from here, there is a night called First Thursdays, where we close down the street on Thursday night, obviously, and 22,000 people were listening to music on the streets the other night. We have 21 entertainment zones across the city in great neighborhoods, and I'm telling you, it's happening. So that's my job. My job is not to dictate to private enterprise how they do their business. I want them doing their business here in San Francisco.
I know former Mayor Ed Lee was a mentor of yours. His Twitter tax breaks, as they were colloquially called, drew Twitter and Uber and Block to mid-market, which now, frankly, is they've all left, and it's back to kind of being a disaster. What did the city learn? What did you learn from those tax breaks?
Back to what we said earlier, that it can't be a one-way street, and it won't be. And I am building relationships with nonprofit leaders, with labor leaders, with business leaders. I'm building relationships, fortunately or unfortunately, with people on the street. And it is a two-way street. There's no more that we're just going to hand things out and just let people do whatever they want. I want to have people coming in. I want to welcome them with open arms. And then, like I said, I want them part of San Francisco, part of the fabric of this city. Because your employees, if you're a CEO, you want your employees liking where they work. I just had one of the executives, the CEOs that I talked about earlier, tell me that they did a survey of their employees about where they wanted to be in the Bay Area. San Francisco was where they wanted to be because of our arts and culture, because of the restaurants, because of nightlife, because of these entertainment zones. And so what we learned is you can't just do a handout without any obligation and responsibility.
So you mentioned the budget and the $1 billion shortfall. Your proposed budget eliminates about 1,400 positions, most of them sort of vacant. You talk about perhaps 100 or so layoffs. And yet you've been criticized for not taking a bigger swing. You've got a sympathetic board, maybe that's a strong word, but a moderate board of supervisors, a lot of political capital. Why haven't you taken a bigger cut at San Francisco's budget problems?
I mean, we actually did quite a lot of right-sizing in this budget. It took us a long time to get in this mess. It's going to take us some time to get out. What I am really proud of is that this budget sets us up on the path, focusing on core services for an economic recovery in years 2, 3, 4, because I do think it's happening. Businesses coming back. There hasn't been this type of cuts in 17 years. And so people can argue what they want. People say I did too much. Yesterday we had people saying, how dare you? And so we've made nobody happy, which I think might be my job. Listen, I took no joy in any of these job losses. It was a really difficult budget. But we had to set ourselves up. We have so much uncertainty, not only at the federal level, but at the state level. We're seeing cuts that pass through to us from both state and federal sources. And so we set aside $400 million in our budget reserves for the uncertainty heading our way. We had to balance this nearly $1 billion budget by law, and we had to make difficult choices, and we did, and we're standing by that.
Well, since you brought it up, let's talk about that $400 million that you've set aside, perhaps for the eventuality that the Trump administration targets San Francisco. We get $2 billion from the federal government. So, what is the risk there? And do you see the administration coming after San Francisco, which is a sanctuary city like others that Trump has targeted, such as Chicago?
It's all real. It's all possible. And how I answer that question is that I'm focused on San Francisco. I can only control what I can control. And that's why the budget, that's why we really focused and prioritized core service around public safety, clean streets, where we really believe if we do that well, we're off to the races. And then revenue comes in directly into city coffers. And that's what I'm focused on. If I worried about what was coming from Washington or from Sacramento, I wouldn't be able to do my job because it seems to change every hour. And so I'm staying focused on San Francisco.
There is an argument advanced by organized labor and some other political allies that the budget shortfall is largely the problem or the fault of tech companies like Uber and Airbnb that are suing over taxes that they believe the city unfairly levied. Tell us what you make of that argument.
So just to be clear, all those companies have paid the taxes.
Right.
They just feel like they overpaid, and so there's a lawsuit
and
happening.
then you have to keep those funds.
And you have to keep it in reserve for if you lose the lawsuit. So I'm not allowed to talk about ongoing litigation. The big thing that I want people to understand, and you all understand this in this audience, is what we were doing as a city was we were using one-time funding from the feds and from the state to pay for ongoing salaries and support, and that's where the 1,400 positions comes in. We're putting an end to that. We are no longer using one-time funding to pay for salaries and pay for positions, whether they're empty or not, and most of them were vacant positions. But those vacant positions actually do cost us money, especially in years 2, 3, 4. And so we're ending that practice. And that's an important thing for everybody to understand. This is not about, a one-time litigation. And so, once again, I want business back in San Francisco. I want them paying taxes here. I want them growing their employee base here. And I'm telling you, it's happening.
2 more questions before I lose you.
Okay.
Maybe people aren't familiar. Your Instagram game is strong, like multiple times a day. It's very well done. Did you realize when you started campaigning for the job that it is essentially indistinguishable from the role of Instagram influencer?
Well, you all be the judge of that. My kids, I think they acknowledge some of the reporting that's been done, that I'm awkward, that I'm a dorky dad, so my kids are getting a kick out of it. I'm having fun with it because my team and I, we know that we have to get the message out. We want to be selling our city. We think it's important to show off all the small businesses that are driving our economy, that are driving our city, that people around the country need to know that San Francisco is on the rise, and this has given us an avenue to do that on a daily basis, and it's been fun.
You enjoy doing it?
People ask me what the biggest surprise is of the job, and I say I love it. Like, I love my job every single day. I honestly, I think I have the best job in the country. Not just in politics, and I definitely have the best job in politics. You can talk to people that have been mayors around this. You go to D.C., you go to Sacramento, I don't think they have as much fun as I do.
Okay, last thing. You can really measure the health of a city by the number of construction cranes. And I think we haven't really had that many in San Francisco.
That's fair.
If over the course of your term, you could build one thing, and maybe your name's on it, maybe it isn't, but you could leave one construction legacy in San Francisco, what would it be?
That's a great question. For me, it's getting more housing built at all income levels. So that's a great question on the cranes. I want cranes all over the place. And
we have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go, but I'm telling you, it's going to happen. San Francisco, we are on the rise. We're on our way back. I hope you'll be part of building it. I appreciate you having me, and I end everything with, let's go San Francisco. We got this.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Please welcome to the stage Chase Lockmiller, co-founder and CEO of Crusoe, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
So you and I spent a lot of time together in Abilene, Texas, the site of Stargate, which, if people here aren't familiar, is OpenAI's big data center with SoftBank and Oracle and Crusoe. You're the developer. So I just wanted to start there. If you haven't seen the premiere episode of The Circuit, we go to Abilene and you can see lots of beautiful shots of data centers rising from the red dirt. But I just wanted to start there and talk about, even in the last 2 months, the progress since then, because you're moving very quickly.
Yeah, no, it's great to see you again, Emily. Even, you look great without a hard hat on, too. Yeah, so, things have been moving very, very quickly in Abilene. At this point, I think I was like looking at the just like the number of hours that have been worked. I think it's we're roughly working 200,000 hours per week, 200,000 man hours per week.
5,000 people there now?
It's going to get to 5,000, okay. But today's like around 3,500. Total in aggregate in the last year, we've worked about 3 million man hours. So it's like a ton of work and hard work, labor, and efforts gone into sort of making this a possibility. But the first 2 buildings, which we announced last summer, are approaching full completion, and the following 6 are kind of being stood up as we speak. So a lot of the area that we went through that they were doing a lot of the earthwork. There are now steel structures there. Building 3 kind of has the wall panels on it, and we're continuing to move very, very quickly.
So this is not only like maybe the biggest data center ever, but the fastest built data center ever. I mean, you guys started last summer.
Yep.
And when's it going to be powering our ChatGPT?
Yeah. So I don't know the exact statistics. Yeah. I mean, people have told me it's the largest data center financing ever. Mm-hmm. We announced a $15 billion facility between Blue Owl as our project capital partner and JP Morgan as the credit on the deal. But we, as far as speed goes, that's something that Crusoe's very focused on. How do we actually accelerate AI innovation by bringing the infrastructure needed to power it to market very, very quickly? And so sort of the numbers that I was told was the fastest 100 megawatt or greater data center had ever been built was roughly 2 years. The first 2 buildings, which are each 100 megawatts, is roughly 300 days. And then the next 6 are a little over 200 days. So I think it's about 215 days per building. So all to say, things are moving quickly.
So President Trump announced this the day after the inauguration with Sam, with Masayoshi Son, with Larry Ellison. You didn't necessarily know it was coming. So take me back to that day when Abilene was uttered by Donald Trump.
Definitely like caught us by surprise. But we were sort of happy to be affiliated with the project. I was actually at a dinner with a bunch of folks in Switzerland, and I sort of had my phone off, and I came out of the dinner, and I had like 15 missed calls and like 25 text messages from all these people saying, "Hey, is this your project? Like, what's going on here? Like, I just watched this announcement in the White House about this thing called Stargate," and I was like, "Wow, I don't even know what's going on." So it definitely was an interesting moment that really catapulted the project into the limelight. But we've been just thrilled to be a part of it, and excited to build this very, very quickly.
So in the episode, we also interview Sam Altman. We interview Masa. You're kind of our tour guide. How did you and Crusoe end up in the middle of this massive deal?
Yeah, I think, I started Crusoe about 7 years ago, and our goal with the business was really taking this energy-first approach to high-performance computing. And, I'd been an AI researcher, mostly focused on quant finance for about a decade before that. And I came to appreciate just how much energy a lot of these larger deep learning models used when you sort of were training them at scale. And so, our philosophy was always kind of taking this energy-first approach. And, as ChatGPT took off and as the demand for AI infrastructure really, went parabolic, people were very, very capacity constrained. There wasn't enough energy in markets like Northern Virginia. And so, Crusoe was well positioned for this, and in that we had sort of lined up a lot of large quantums of interesting power sources in non-traditional data center markets, like Abilene, Texas. And our goal was really, how do we, instead of trying to build the next data center in Northern Virginia, how do we actually find power so that we can build really big facilities in markets like Abilene? And Abilene is very unique in the sense that there's a ton of wind that's been built there on the back of production tax credits, and wind developers were incentivized to come there, and they were sort of getting paid to produce clean power. And one of the big problems is actually they don't have enough demand or transmission to get that power out of that market. And so, it was sort of a perfect fit for a large AI data center. And we sort of we're well positioned to capitalize on this, and we had some interesting conversations with some of the partners, and everybody sort of locked arms, and we said, let's go build the world's biggest AI data center.
Let's talk about how tightly the arms are locked, because we did talk to a lot of people in Abilene. Residents were mixed. I mean, some people don't really know for sure what it is. They just know this big data center is being built. We talked to a lot of city officials who agreed to give up a lot of tax revenue in order for this data center to be built there. However, nothing would be there otherwise. And so in their view, it's still bringing in millions of dollars that they wouldn't have. I got some calls after the piece aired from folks who are really worried about the power and water demands that this will put on the area. Going back to the Texas power crisis in 2021, where like hundreds of people died during blackouts. If the power goes out in Texas, what happens? Does Stargate and ChatGPT stay on, and do the residents lose their power?
Let's see here. So where to start? So the first thing I'll say is that, from a tax revenue standpoint, the city of Abilene's been a great partner to us, and Taylor County's been a great partner to us as well. And, as this facility gets built, we're going to make up about a third of the overall tax budget. So we are a very large contributor to the tax revenue in the city, and about 25% of tax revenue in the county. So we are, I think we're the largest single tax contributor to, the local economy. So from that perspective, I feel like we're definitely contributing quite a bit, very meaningfully in terms of, the overall tax revenue picture. From the power and water perspective, I think we talked about it quite a bit when we were on site. We'll start with the water. On the water side, we actually purposely designed it as a closed loop architecture in the data center, so that we, and the difference between a closed loop and an open loop system is an open loop water cooled system is where you have cold water feeding in, and then you're sort of, creating hot water through the cooling process, and then you're just basically disposing of that hot water. Right. When you have a closed loop system, it actually goes through these chillers that basically takes the hot exhaust water and then cools it back down and then recirculates it through the system. So while each building requires 1 million gallons of water, you only have to fill it one time, and then it's sort
only
of
one time, because people are like, that's total BS. There's no way.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell them, but
all right.
That's just how it works. There's like probably moments of topping it off a little bit, but this is like every few years. It's not like it's a very incremental amount. Now on the power side, we've gone through all of the appropriate processes to basically get the ERCOT approved power load. All of the load studies have been done across the grid to basically ensure that this load is approved and is not going to disrupt the grid in any sort of meaningful way. And then we've also invested in backup generation on site. So we actually invested in gas generation as a backup resource, which is much cleaner than diesel. We've invested in all of the most aggressive mechanisms to eliminate pollutants. We've added something called SCRs to our gas turbines. It stands for selective catalytic reducers, that basically eliminate almost all of the NOx and the carbon monoxide, the two biggest contributors to smog, so that when we do have to run on the gas turbines, it really mitigates a lot of the local air quality issues that may be associated with that fossil-based generation.
Now, I want to talk, a little more broadly about, you just raised money. You've got a big cloud business. There's, CoreWeave, which recently went public, which is not totally apples to apples, but, you definitely do overlap. Can you talk about sort of the bigger picture for Crusoe amidst this data center boom that is not just happening in the U.S., AI data center boom, but around the world?
Sure. Crusoe is an American business first and foremost, but we do have a global footprint. We've taken a very vertically integrated approach to artificial intelligence, recognizing that, everything has really had to be reinvented, from, the way you source power to the way you design the data center to the way you build and operate and manage these clusters with, both physical infrastructure as well as high-performance software. So from that standpoint, we've sort of taken a full stack approach. Certainly there are elements of where CoreWeave is definitely a peer to Crusoe, and I think we've been, sort of rooting on their stock price as, it serves as a great comp to us, and really proves out the success of the business model. I think our biggest footprint is in America, but again, taking that energy-first approach, we've made massive investments in Iceland, where you have, again, abundant, low-cost, clean geothermal and hydropower to power these large clusters of GPUs that we serve customers both in the US as well as in Europe.
I do want to talk about CoreWeave because the stock kind of sputtered at first, and now it's really going up, and maybe it's because of this small group of investors that's bidding up the stock. Actually, the Information had this headline: the most dangerous game in artificial intelligence investing right now is CoreWeave. Why?
I missed that article, but I think I'm not sure. I can't speak for the buyers of the stock and kind of what's in their mind, but certainly there are people that think it's worth $75 billion, and if that's the case, markets tend to be efficient. So.
How much does it have to do with the skepticism around this AI data center boom? We've seen, for example, Microsoft and Amazon pulling back on some of their commitments. Like, do we really need all these data centers, or are we going to find a more efficient way to power AI? And I did talk to Sam about this, who said, absolutely, we will, but it's just not happening now.
I think a lot has been made of some of these pullbacks, but I would say they're more the exception than the rule. A lot of the conversations I'm involved in, I'm seeing way more demand than we have the capacity to bring online in the near term. So I think, we're going to see a lot of infrastructure built similar to Abilene at probably a bigger scale. And just, the overbuild question, I think, I think in a lot of ways the overbuild question is like a function of like, oh, what could go wrong with like all these investments being made? I think from my perspective, I think about it like, what could go right? Like, we are completely transforming the ways in which that people work, the way that people live, the way that people operate, and the productivity that, an individual is capable of by adding this superhuman level intelligence. And, when you look at the scale and the magnitude of these investments, like what's happening in Abilene, it's like it's a cluster, it's the size of a cluster that's never been built. It's a gigawatt scale computer, like single computer, essentially. It's all fully interconnected. That's never existed before, and it's going to drive incredible breakthroughs that are going to change people's lives. And, from my perspective, bigger investments than that are going to drive even more breakthroughs and lead to more human prosperity.
How does Stargate compare to xAI's build out in Memphis?
I've only sort of followed loosely the headlines, so I can't comment on a lot of the specifics.
Really?
I keep tabs on it, but I think the scale of it is, I think what's been announced is about 100,000 each 200s. So that's for the like rough math, like that's like the equivalent of like 50,000 GB200s. Like this, what's being built in Abilene is about 400,000 GB200s, so it's roughly like 8 times bigger. I think it was certainly impressive what they were able to accomplish. I have tremendous respect for that team, and at Crusoe sort of sitting at this foundational layer, we're really just kind of like rooting for the whole space to accelerate artificial intelligence and the abundance of intelligence and energy that's going to drive prosperity for people.
So OpenAI just announced OpenAI for countries, and the first one beyond Texas that has been announced is in Abu Dhabi. Apparently Elon wasn't too happy about that. But can you just sort of paint the picture of how you see this AI data center build out unfolding around the world over the next decade? Like where, obviously there's different countries that are already becoming hotbeds for popular places for data centers.
Yeah, I think it sort of speaks to, the possibilities that everybody sees in artificial intelligence and the importance it's going to play in everybody's life in the future. But you're seeing massive investments taking place in Europe. You're seeing it in the Middle East with Stargate UAE. Japan has a lot of incentive programs that they've sort of put in place to incentivize a lot of infrastructure to be built in Japan. So it is a global phenomenon, and we're excited, just for the space to continue to grow and change people's lives.
So what's next for Crusoe? Where's your next Stargate? We've been hearing rumors rumors of other locations, other places in Texas, maybe other states. Like, where else are you building?
You know, Crusoe is focused on a lot. You know, I would say the bulk of our investments are being made in the U.S., but we are looking at stuff, you know, across Europe. I can't speak about, you know, specifics, but we are looking at a number of different states, you know, beyond Texas. More expansion in Texas. We love Texas. I think it's a great market with, you know, great resources and, you know, the ability to bring on more abundant energy. You know, one thing that I will say is that, you know, we've taken this very modular approach to how we build the infrastructure. So we've been rapidly scaling up our manufacturing capacity to be able to support a lot of the electrical equipment that makes up one of these big AI data centers. So, you know, we set up a manufacturing facility in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you know, where we have hundreds of people working there today, and that's soon going to be thousands of people that are manufacturing critical electrical components for these big AI data centers. And I think, you know, as people focus often on, you know, wow, AI is going to eliminate all these jobs, I'm sort of sitting at the other end of the spectrum of like, I can't hire enough people. There like simply aren't enough, you know, blue collar trades, you know, trained workers to basically support the demand we're seeing from the market. So I really believe that this is one of the greatest labor booms that, you know, we've ever seen as a U.S. economy.
Well, maybe all the software engineers who are out of a job can go be data center builders in Abilene.
Well, yeah, train them as electricians.
Last question, because, you know, I know you feel very strongly about the possibilities of AI. You told me that you thought maybe AGI could be born in Abilene, Texas. In talking with Sundar Pichai last night, he was like, yeah, you know, I asked about the limits of AI. Is it possible we don't ever get to AGI? And he's like, yeah, actually, sure, it's possible that we don't get there. Like, are we overestimating what AI can do?
No. I think if anything, we're underestimating it. It's like, you know, I think we're standing at this moment where, you know, you look into the future and it's just a future of infinite possibility of just like you know, what could happen. And I think if you talk to anybody that's working on, you know, the foundational model layer, I think everybody's so impressed with what's happened today. And they're like, just wait to see what's coming. And I think like, you know, even just looking at the progress over the last 18 months, right? 18 months ago, all anybody could talk about was like, yeah, these things are good, but like they hallucinate, and can we really trust them? And like hallucinations. Nobody's talking about hallucinations anymore because they've mostly gone away. We've been able to solve it with, you know, more investment in the innovation layer of.
We're still talking about it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just wait.
All right, Chase Lockmiller of Crusoe,
so
everyone. Thank you, Chase.
Please welcome to the stage Dara Khosrowshahi, CEO of Uber, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Tom Giles.
All right, Dara, it's good to have you here. You'll be pleased to know that we did an informal straw poll earlier to see how many people came in Ubers, how many came in Waymos. The Ubers were about 4-1 over the Waymos, but of course they're a partner. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to start with some news that came out of Uber earlier this week. Thank you, Natalie Lung, for breaking that story about some changes, upper management. You promoted Andrew McDonald to Chief Operating Officer. You were quick to say you're not going anywhere anytime soon. You also said in your note something that was a little bit of a little enigmatic to those of us on the outside, that with Max stepping up, I intend to put focus on our 6 strategic shifts, spending more time with our tech teams. Tell us about what are the 6 strategic shifts, and why do you need to spend more time with the tech teams?
Well, I think if I talked about all 6, we'd be here the whole time. But for example, one that we talk about for us is becoming much more of a company in terms of the lifetime relationship with our customers. And one of the reasons why actually I wanted to bring Mac in as President COO, he's been at Uber longer than I have, for 13 years. He's an incredible veteran, incredible operator, is that the power we see in the Uber platform continues to increase. Now, what I mean by that is we have a relationship with you on the ride side. A lot of you using Uber to come here. Thank you very much. And then our Uber Eats business is almost as large as our Uber Rides business, and growing very, very quickly and accelerating, if anything. And looking at a customer right now, the way the business was built, we essentially had a mobility business that Mac ran, a delivery business that Pierre Dimitri ran, did a terrific job. And it was almost like two businesses interacting with you as a customer. And now the focus for us is really moving to lifetime interaction with a customer, looking at you not just as an Uber customer, Uber Eats customer, but overall as an Uber customer, and how do we continue to build that relationship. For example, the membership program that we've got, Uber One, gives you no delivery fees and discounts on rides. We've got 30 million members, and people who use multiple products on Uber tend to have, transact with us much more, tend to have much more satisfaction with the product. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get an experienced operating executive to really focus on the overall relationship with the customer rather than, separate P&Ls.
I think you said 1 in 5 of your customers are using both mobility and delivery.
It's about, now it's closer to a third now, so it's increasing steadily.
So it's moving in the right direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to get that number higher, and where do you want it to be in, say, 3 years?
Well, listen, we want to get to 50%, and once we get to 50%, I want to go higher than that. And it's about the little interactions every day. For example, when I got a ride to the office the other day, and along the way, I was offered a coffee from Phil's to be ready for me along the way to the office, right? And so it's those little interactions that are value add to the consumer. It's like, great, of course I want my morning coffee, and if it can be ready for me right on the way to work, that's awesome. That is also a way to kind of get me to use Uber Eats, for example, if I didn't use it. Now I use Eats all the time. But it's these little interactions powered by AI, powered by personalization, understanding the context of where you're going, and there's a coffee shop close by to give you that opportunity. It's those experiences that we have to build more and more, which is one of the reasons now I'm going to work more with the tech teams, because they're the ones building these experiences.
I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your relationship with autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, sure.
It's up and down for Uber over the years, even preceding your tenure. You have stakes in a lot of AV companies.
Yes.
You talked recently about wanting to monetize some of those. Can you tell us a little bit, or your stakes in your equity stakes generally? You didn't specify AVs, but I am curious. Have you identified where you want to focus? What do you want to free the cash up? Is it about developing deeper relationships with a select number of AV partners? What's the strategy?
So we want to essentially support the AV ecosystem and continue to help that ecosystem develop, and then AVs penetrate into the marketplace. AV, we think, represents a safer way of transportation. Ultimately, we think it'll expand the marketplace as it makes kind of safe transportation in cities available to everybody. So we're big fans of AV. And generally, we're working with multiple partners in the ecosystem, Waymo, for example, in Austin, and Atlanta coming up, Wave, Avri. There are probably 18 partnerships that we have in the AV ecosystem, and we want to help these players develop by investing in them in some cases, but really by working with them to bring their product to market. These are technologies that are unbelievably promising, but they've taken billions of dollars to develop, and 10 plus years. And it's one of those overnight successes that's kind of taken 20 years of development, but is finally ready to hit market, and we want to help the ecosystem get there. Separately, we have large stakes in many companies, well over $5 billion, that we think we can take some of those stakes and essentially recycle them into additional investments in the AV ecosystem. So over a period of time, we'll get it right. We've got a ton of free cash flow of the company. So one way or the other, the goal is to build up the AV ecosystem around our network.
Build up the AV ecosystem. You guys have the UI, for example, that works really well. You have that customer relationship that maybe some of them don't. So is the idea you really want to kind of concentrate on a fewer number, or is it just keep the broad number of AV partners?
I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that we partner with the right players, and I'd say safety is the most important area. We want to make sure that they pass with flying colors through our safety case, which is actually pretty tough. But to the extent that the tech is there, the team is there, safety is part of the culture, we want to work with them. So there's right now, there are a number of promising partners, and you'll probably see the number of partners increase for us.
Okay. You mentioned your relationship with Waymo. We had Sundar last night.
Yeah.
Asked him about when he's going to be able to take a Waymo from Mountain View all the way up to San Francisco. We're not quite there yet, but
Not yet.
But there are genuine concerns about the ways that you are both a partner and a competitor to Waymo. What is the conversation like internally and with your board over how you continue to deepen that, what is a valuable relationship as far as I can tell, but also keep it from becoming something that starts to undermine your business?
Well, the relationship with Waymo, I think the press and to some extent investors love to create drama because what the hell? But, you know, the type of relationship that we have with Waymo is very similar, for example, to the type of relationship we'll have with the Starbucks coffee. They're a great partner with Uber Eats, and at the same time, Starbucks wants to have its own app and wants to have interactions directly with the customer, and it isn't an either or, it's an and. So we offer Starbucks on Eats, and they compete with us in some ways with the Starbucks app and with their loyalty program, and that's fine. That's the way business goes. Same thing with Domino's. Domino's 3 years ago wasn't going to work with the platforms, now works with the platforms. And in the same way, in San Francisco, yes, we compete with Waymo to get rides here, but in Austin, Atlanta, we absolutely work with them. And what we're seeing in Austin is, frankly, the launch is going better than we expected. Number one is safety, and obviously Waymo's, you know, the best at it. And number two is customer love, and our customers are loving kind of the delight and surprise of getting a Waymo, and they're coming back. So I do think that this is going to be, it's not an either or. We're going to be working together. Waymo is developing its own channels, and at the same time, we can work together very constructively.
As we head toward an increasingly AV future, I know you've been asked about this before, but what are some of the new ways that you're seeking to overcome that challenge of reassuring drivers who are still an incredibly important part of your ecosystem,
very much
that
so.
You have their backs, but we also love these Waymos that have no driver in them?
Very much so. So one is, growth helps a lot, right? So our business is growing almost 20% a year, and on average, we're going to need more drivers on the platform for the next couple of years, and I see that continuing for some period of time. So I think drivers generally on our platform are going to be more busy, are going to have more to do, and the number of drivers on our platform and couriers on our platform is going to grow. That's one. The second, though, is we're putting significant efforts in creating more work and earnings opportunities for drivers and couriers, right? We started with driving, we went to delivery, now you can actually shop, and there's a subsegment of couriers, et cetera, who, you know, will love their local Walmart, for example, or Albertsons, and, you know, shop in those stores. Or for Walmart, we deliver those packages. And now we're actually going further, where we're developing now what we call Uber AI solutions, where drivers are actually now labeling maps, translating language, looking at AI answers and grading AI answers. So, you know, one way to look at Uber is that we are essentially a transportation platform. We'll help you go anywhere, get anything. Another way to look at Uber is that we are the largest on-demand work platform on Earth. And the first use case for us is actually transportation. And now we're expanding use cases into other use cases, and knowledge work is one of them. So I think as long as we grow, as long as we are honest with our drivers and couriers in terms of their expectations, and now expand the number of opportunities to them, I think we'll be more than fine.
You're actually getting your drivers, you're encouraging your drivers to help the AI. and make it smarter, the AI that's going to
it's going to
put
it's going to be a part of our life going forward, and it's good work, and certainly our drivers are qualified to do it.
How much of their time do you find they're spending doing that? I assume this is like in the course of a day's drive.
It's very small compared to the overall workload, right? We're doing over 33 million trips a day now in terms of our mainline segments. But Uber AI Solutions is a very, very promising growth segment for us. And I think in 5-10 years, it will be a significant part of the overall opportunities that we're giving to our drivers and couriers.
I want to talk about Bill Ackman.
Sure.
His relationship with Uber. It's nice to have an activist who's friendly, as far as I can tell. Tell us about the ways that you are interacting with Bill and how he is encouraging Uber to be better.
Yeah, so Bill is one of the legendary investors out there. So I was very happy. Like I'm a fan of his kind of investing, fundamentals, long-term, making big bets. So I've always admired Bill. So when we found out that he was a shareholder, it was like right on. And the cool thing about Bill as a shareholder is he uses the product. He is intensely interested in the product. He's talking to his drivers. So he gives me a lot of feedback, and actually a couple of features. For example, he was leaving dinner one night and he wanted to order Ubers for his kids and his parents. And for some technical reasons, we couldn't do that at the time. And we built that feature based on that idea, and it's proving to be a really cool feature. So you want the kind of long-term investor that Bill is. But what's cool about it is that he's actually, he's brilliant, but he uses a product and he uses it in a constructive way. And we've got a great relationship.
Speaking of relationships with folks on the East Coast, Silicon Valley has this really interesting relationship with the Trump administration right now, this need to engage, but also recognizing that there are policies that the Trump administration, like any administration, is pursuing that may not work so well for the tech industry. No taxes on tips, something that's part of the legislation,
yes.
Something that you would say you support. Can you talk about kind of the dialogue that you have with the president, and what kind of feedback are you giving him on that? What kind of feedback are you giving him on the tax bill more generally?
Yeah, so one is no taxes on tips is, we think, a terrific piece of legislation. It will, if passed, save our drivers and couriers hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes that they would have otherwise paid. So we are big supporters of that.
Have you put a specific number on that over a time period?
It's in the hundreds of millions. I don't know the specifics, but it's significant. And we think it's appropriately targeted, to a segment of the population that we all want to succeed. And I've been very supportive of that directly with the president and our folks with the staff. And I see generally we engage with every administration out there, both on a federal level and on a state level. We certainly engage with the Trump administration. And what I like in terms of what I'm seeing is that it is a pro-growth, pro-business in terms of kind of common business interest administration, and we'll continue to engage with them constructively going forward.
There's a lot of rhetoric around immigration
Yes.
and a lot of policies around immigration that have a mixed effect. What's your message to the Trump administration when it comes to limitations on immigration? You rely on immigrants for both drivers, for your engineers, across the board.
Yeah, so I think, and I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 9 years old, so I am absolutely pro-immigration generally for the U.S., but I think there's no question that we should secure our borders. And so I think from that standpoint, we're very supportive. Our drivers and couriers have been quite supportive of President Trump as well for similar reasons. And I think with immigration, there is a dialogue for us to be had, which is what is the right level of immigration in this country, how we select, how we qualify, et cetera. That I'm hoping that we get to have that dialogue as a country. And I think that dialogue suffers from kind of the two sides shooting at each other. But I think that if we can just come together and recognize that this is a largely immigrant nation, and immigration done right can benefit society, done wrong, it can go the other way. So let's just focus on doing it right.
Well, for example, and it's not necessarily that we're building a wall on the northern border, but you on your earnings call talked about the ways that some of this sort of unwillingness to come to the United States because of some of its political stances toward foreign countries starting to affect your business.
We've definitely seen Canadian immigration into or travel to the U.S. Come down from historical levels.
Right.
The good news for Uber is that we're a global company, so to the extent that Canadians are traveling to Europe, they use Uber in Canada, and they'll be able to use Uber in Europe as well. So for us, the effect on the business is changing business mix.
Okay.
But as long as people travel and the global economies are doing well, which they are, we're going to interact with consumers one way or the other.
Have you seen any shifts since the last weighed in on this topic?
The biggest one is a Canadian shift, and that has there was a, I'd say, initial significant effect, and we're seeing some of that continue, not all of it continue.
You talked about the consumer sentiment holding up. What have you seen since you last talked to the public about that?
Well, I'm not going to update. Obviously, we're in the middle of a quarter. But generally, we have seen for the past 2 years, and that has continued into last quarter, the consumer remains strong. We're not seeing any effects in terms of, lack of confidence, et cetera. We look to see if consumers are trading down, for example, the kind of restaurants that they're eating at, or are reducing the size of, let's say, their shopping baskets. We don't see any signal whatsoever. The U.S. consumer and generally the global consumer has remained resilient. And obviously, I'm hoping that continues.
I want to take just a couple seconds before I get kicked off. I get kicked off.
I get kicked off, I think. You're staying.
I understand that you are considering stablecoin as a vehicle for Uber. Talk about where your considerations are and how that might benefit your business.
Yeah, we're still in the study phase, I'd say, but I think stablecoin is one of the, for me, more interesting instantiations of crypto that has a practical benefit other than crypto as a store of value. Obviously, you can have your opinions on Bitcoin, but it's a proven commodity, and people have different opinions on where it's going. But I do think that stablecoin is quite promising, especially for global companies that are moving money around globally to create a mechanism for us to essentially reduce costs in terms of moving money internationally. So that's super interesting to us, and we're definitely going to take a look.
Taking a look at it closely. Dara, thank you so much for joining us today at Bloomberg Tech. It was great to have you here. Please
thank you.
Give me a round of applause. Thank you. All right, as Dara mentioned, I'm sticking around just to introduce you to our next panel, born out of UC Berkeley, where I actually have the privilege of being a lecturer and welcoming a couple of my students here today. This is an AI ranking platform called LM Arena, and it's become something of an obsession across the Valley. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Please join me in welcoming its founders in a conversation with my colleague, Bloomberg's Rachel Metz.
Hey.
Go Bears.
I have this whole giant couch to myself. So for people who aren't familiar, explain what LM Arena is and what is it exactly that you guys are measuring over there?
Sure. So LM Arena is an open community platform for testing and evaluating all the top AI models. So you can go to lmarena.ai, and what you'll see is the ability to interact with not just ChatGPT, but also Google's Gemini or Anthropic's Claude, and not just to interact with them, but also to battle them against one another. So you can chat, and then you'll see two anonymous models and say, compare which one's better, vote for it. And we use those votes to construct a leaderboard of which models are best on the distribution of real-world use, also on different tasks like math, coding, instruction following. And it's not just us using this, but we have a community of millions of people that come to the platform and vote. They come for all sorts of reasons. It's pretty diverse, 60% tech, but 40% all sorts of other things, just to try different AIs and to use them all in one platform. So that's what LM is. And if you have anything to add, Weilin.
Yeah, and today we are excited to be here, and we actually built a custom LM Arena just for Bloomberg. Ooh. So people can check it out on bloomberg.lmarena.ai. You can go there and then ask questions. We do a text-to-image arena this time, so you can input whatever description you want to generate image and then compare to the image model, and we have a live leaderboard.
It'll be cool to see what the Bloomberg audience likes best.
That's true. So this started as an academic research project. At the time, you two were both graduate students at UC Berkeley. And it's really caught on over the last couple of years. AI companies like OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, they use it to test out different AI models, sometimes in advance of them being released. Why do you think it struck a chord with companies and also with the people who are coming to try out these models and rank them?
Yeah, what do you think, Weilin?
So yes, we've been running this project since 2 years ago. And then these days, we've been working with all the frontier AI labs, including OpenAI, Google, XAI, Meta, to test their pre-release models. And because these days it's been becoming a technical challenge right now, how to evaluate these AI, especially for real-world use cases. So we've been focusing on scaling this platform in order to capture, very diverse user bases covering all different industries. Yep.
Maybe it's also worth saying, part of the reason why people come is they like seeing multiple opinions. They like seeing multiple AIs in one place and using them all in one interface and comparing them, being able to do so on one platform. And they're also really excited by the opportunity to look at some new models from the top providers pre-release. So they all sort of appreciate this, and that's what's led to some growth.
What you guys are doing is one of many different kinds of attempts to measure capabilities of new AI models, especially of powerful AI models, what are sometimes called frontier models. What is the use, though, of these so-called benchmarks?
Sure. So I think it's worth maybe zooming out and thinking a little bit about what is the standard benchmark in AI versus what is LM Arena. So in a standard benchmark, what happens is you are looking at a narrow vertical of tasks. Think about something like an ImageNet or an MMLU, which is a multiple choice question answering data set. So let's say multiple choice question answering. I want to understand how good my models are at that. I'm going to collect a bunch of multiple choice questions. I'm going to have experts label them. I'm going to collect that into a data set. I release it online or I keep it private. And then I have models, answer those questions. And then I see how they perform. Okay, so that's the standard paradigm of so-called benchmarking. Now, what's the issue with this? The issue with this is in the current era of AI, things are moving so quickly and AI models are doing all these subjective tasks that are so broad that you really could never collect a single data set or even 10 or 20 data sets that would parameterize all the possible real use cases. LM Arena works a little bit differently, though, in the sense that we have this community of millions of people that come to the website, and they're asking basically whatever they want. And so it encompasses a huge diversity of tasks that we then collect human preference about. So we ask them which ones they like better, and then use that massive data to extract analytics. So we're basically inverting the problem from, hey, I'm going to look at what this particular narrow task, and instead saying, let's take all the data we have and extract analytics from that in terms of which models are best.
Okay. And this, so as I said before, this started as a research project. You have turned it into a company very recently, and you just closed a large funding round for your company, $100 million, which values the company at $600 million. How is that money going to help you grow LM Arena from a research project into an enduring company?
So we haven't commented at all on the valuation, first of all. But in terms of where we're going to put the money, the platform is actually quite expensive to run. And the reason is because we have a lot of users that are coming in and using the AIs. And we're hoping to scale the community. I think, Weilin should talk more about that. But as the community scales, our costs for running it are also going to scale. So we're just planning for success here in terms of growing the platform and serving our user base.
You want to add anything, Laela?
Yeah, so right now we are serving over a million monthly users right now. And then with the new product launch just last week, we are basically transitioned to a more friendly UI, UX in order to scale the usage of it. So you can imagine operating a platform to serve tens of millions of users.
Okay. Right now, as you mentioned, the majority of people that are testing AI models on Ella Marina come from the tech community. The rest come from all various types of people. I'm just curious how important it is to you to make the user base more diverse, and how are you going to do that?
Yeah, that's super important. Because if you think about it, enterprises around the world are asking the question, how do I build reliable AI in my use case? How do I pick the right AI for me? Which model? And even individual developers and individual people are asking, hey, which model should I subscribe to? And so if we're going to be able to faithfully answer that question for people, that means we need to grow a diverse community. And how do we hope to do that? Well, by looking at our current user base and the users that we have, ask them what they like and continue to dig in on it. So we're trying to take a community-first approach in terms of looking at, hey, the people that are in our platform that are using this for school, well, why are they using it? How can we improve the platform for them? How can we give them the models that they want in a way that really serves their needs?
Mm-hmm. What are, you branched out into, initially it was chatbot arena, it was testing large language models, and you've moved into a lot of different kinds of products since then that people can test out as AI has been used in a lot of different ways over the past few years for different kinds of specialized models. I'm really curious if you're thinking about other areas that you might get into, other types of products that Ella Marina might be putting together.
For sure.
Yeah, so we are expanding the platform right now to covering more use cases, as we mentioned, including more modality like text to image, image input, or even like text to website. These days, people are prompting the model to build a real website, and then it's covering more advanced coding capability. And then we are soon going to launch, covering let's say text to a video. Oh. Or even longer document understanding use cases for enterprises.
You're collecting preference data. This is how much a user likes a given model or one model versus another. How much do you think that information matters?
So preference data is perhaps more powerful than it might seem at first glance. I mean, there's a reason why all the top language models are trained using preference data. There's a reason why people are building reward models off of this preference data. And that's because the power of preference data is it allows you to collect richer signal than you might otherwise be able to collect by labeling. If you think about it, the standard benchmarking paradigm of the ImageNet and the MMLU works for tasks where humans know the right answer. When you know the right answer, you can grade the model, and that means you can teach it. But what if you don't know what the right answer is? What if I ask you, hey, write me the best love letter to my significant other? Well, there's no canonical Platonic best love letter. You need to be able to grade that, be a preference. Some people like different love letters versus others. You might even want to understand what kinds of people like different kinds of love letters. And that's not just about love letters, it's also about anything, right? Many of the use cases for AI are subjective. That's their nature. Sure. And so human preference is actually very important to evaluate that. And then even for objective tasks, the things we think of as objective are only partially so. Things like math and coding, they involve preference factors. And in fact, our goal is to take this preference data and use it to extract out all the different components of why people prefer something. If you prefer it, part of it is because it's factual, part of it is because it's true, part of it is because it's easier for you to consume, part of it is because, you just like it better, and that's because, you're Rachel and I'm Anastasia, we like different things. And we want to be able to understand all of it.
One thing that you've actually faced criticism about recently there was a research report alleging issues such as that some companies can game Ella Marina by submitting many models for private testing and then only publishing scores for the ones that perform best. Can companies game Ella Marina?
I think to answer that question, you need to step back and think about what does a leaderboard mean? When somebody gets to the top of the leaderboard, that means that our community of millions of real people came and voted for that model. That's not something that we even have control over, right? That's just real people voting. And so, for sure, I think that the integrity of the leaderboard comes from our community. Our job is to faithfully reflect what they think, and there's no way to game that.
Why should people trust Ella Marina?
People should trust Ella Marina because we have a scientific approach to understanding our community's preferences. And our goal is to reflect those faithfully.
Okay. The last question here for you guys. How do you envision turning Ella Marina into a successful business, but also remaining a neutral testing platform? I know that's very important to you guys.
Yeah, neutrality is a core value for us. You can't run a leaderboard unless you're neutral, right? So we're very well aware that this is, going to be a core value of our business, and we're never going to let any of the incentives involved corrupt the leaderboard. It's going to always be something that is driven by our community. Wei Lin, do you want to say anything here?
Yeah, because we set up this company with the mission of helping people to build reliable AI applications and helping model provider, helping developers. So, that's our job to make sure that the evaluation is truthful, faithful.
Anastasios and Wei Lin, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having us.
It was really great to speak with you. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Han Pak, Senior Vice President and Head of Digital Health Team Mobile Experience Business at Samsung Electronics, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Mike Olson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Olson. I'm an editor with Bloomberg Media Studios. I am very pleased to be joined with Dr. Han Pak from Samsung Electronics. We're here for Samsung's sponsor spotlight, which is unlocking AI's potential for a healthier you. So welcome. I really appreciate your time. AI is inevitably, understandably, a huge part of this conference, a huge part of the conversations that we're having here. So can you tell us how technology and AI can support health and wellness, why that's not at odds or there's not a contradiction in that?
Sure. Great to be here. I think if we look at the major trends, whether it's the aging population with increased prevalence of chronic diseases, you look at the cost of care rising, there are some major trends that clearly is causing care to shift to the home. I think that's a very clear signal that we have seen, and others, I think, agree. With that shift, we now need technology and AI to be able to help families take on the burden for that care in ways that have not been necessary. And so we think it's a problem, the care at home shift, but it's also an opportunity where AI and technology plays a role. And so if you look right now in the U.S. spending, we spend about 25% of our budget on preventable disease that with lifestyle changes we should be able to avoid. And yet, how much spending do we do on prevention? 3%. Why the mismatch? Well, there are a lot of reasons. Most of you probably know, but part of this issue is applying the, you would think it's 25-25, but there are challenges with spending those dollars on preventable diseases. But we think that the technology on the wearables that's continuously monitoring you, that can currently screen, but in the future detect diseases from right now sleep apnea, arrhythmias, but in the future cardiometabolic, and in the neurocognitive dementia area. So I think we have some huge opportunities to really focus on prevention. And I would say Dr. Leroy Hood's P4 medicine gives us a vision for what technology and AI can do, which is preventive, personalized, preventive, predictive, and participatory. And of that, I think prevention, I think, has always been an issue or challenge for us as a country, as a society. We think that and helping people meeting people where they are with technology, understanding the context, understanding the fallbacks and setbacks that we have in life because we're busy, and then getting them, nudging them to the goals. I think these are the things where technology is exciting.
You mentioned wearables, you mentioned prevention being such a priority. Is that why Samsung is so involved in this, why there's a passion within the company to be first in this space?
Sure. We're really committed to healthcare. And the reason, in part, is because care is shifting to the home where we have a trusted brand. So I would say trust and scale. One is we have 1 billion people using our device in their hands. We have 70% of U.S. households that have one Samsung device or more. We have about 58 million monthly active users globally that are using Samsung Health app to take care of their health. Given that, our vision is to really what we call connected care centered around the home to improve the health of billions of people, connecting the devices and the data, the people, and the services in a seamless way.
Where else can technology and AI play a role?
Yeah. I think, there's lots of areas, but, from where I sit, I think one of the biggest areas is about healthy aging. And healthy aging looks different for different people. For me, I want an assistant that knows me, that I have sometimes setbacks in a day, and knows that I need a little less nudging than some other days. So it's really about knowing the context, knowing where I am in my journey towards the goal. And so let's give a concrete example. Let's say there's a person, is a healthy person, a young person, who has a family history of dementia and other conditions. And so with the engine, with the capabilities, we're able to understand where they are and then be able to interact with food app, recipe apps, and other things to help you because there's risk of diabetes as an example. And so I think it's really about hyper-personalization at scale with context. That's probably what areas of healthy aging looks like.
Well, I know you were talking about sneaking in a workout before you're back on a plane, so I think you're in a good spot right now.
Thanks.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you for joining me today for the Samsung Sponsor Spotlight, and thank you to everyone for listening in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage, Laela Sturdy, Please welcome to the stage, Laela Sturdy, Managing Partner at CapitalG, and Rich Wong, Partner at Excel, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Katie Roof.
Hey, buddy.
Great to be here on a timely moment for the topic, right? Just before we went on stage, Rich's firm made money off of Circle, hundreds of millions of dollars off of the Circle IPO. So it begs the question, are IPOs back?
Well, I can't think one data point doesn't make a trend yet, but we are very happy for Jeremy Allaire, who's the founder and CEO of Circle, and it did, I think, just start trading just a few minutes ago, and it looks like a good start. I think for both Laela and I, there's a number of companies in the pipeline, both from an S1 perspective, and there's the beginnings of a lot of top of the funnel discussions around M&A as well. And I think it's a lot more active than it was a year or 2 years ago. So I think there are good signs ahead, we think.
But meanwhile, Laela is involved with Stripe, which has at one point wanted to IPO, and now it seems like they're trying to do tender offers instead. And so what's the rationale for companies that are choosing not to IPO, but that can?
Yeah, I think that's been a conversation for a long time for the last couple of years. I mean, the data shows the average length that companies have stayed public, I think, or before they've gone public has stretched from what used to be more like 6 or 7 a couple of years ago to more like 10 or 11 now. And I think that just speaks to the availability of capital options that truly generational companies like Stripe have. The private markets are robust. There's a lot of capital available to companies that are operating in big markets that have really strong financial profiles. And I think that capital availability, especially to do things like tender offers, which employee liquidity, for example, used to be a big reason that companies would want to go public. And with the private markets available to fill that need, staying private also has a lot of optionality and positive benefits that I think the best companies have the choice of whether to stay or to go, and that's what you're seeing.
So could Stripe stay private forever, or would they reach a point where they run out of private investors to keep bidding it up? And, wouldn't you think someday they'd want to access the broader scope of people, the retail?
I think forever is a long time, so I doubt that will be the case. And I think, again, at Stripe and many other, I think we have the largest number of really billion-dollar companies that are private, that the public markets are excited to sort of access that growth, access that opportunity. And I think, I doubt it will be forever, but I think what you see is really robust private markets, not just new capital coming in for tender offers, but you're also seeing a real big change in the venture landscape of liquidity of early stage investors selling to later stage or crossover funds. So you're seeing liquidity in the private markets in much more robust ways than you've seen historically. And I think there will be a time that most generational technology companies will choose to go public. There are still advantages, especially in the enterprise space. There's still cheaper availability of capital. So there's a lot of great reasons to go public. But I think with many of these private companies, you're seeing the operating discipline of the public markets happening in the private markets, quarterly investment calls, all the traditional sort of operating infrastructure is happening in these companies. So, you know, the trade-offs are real for the founders that are still trying to innovate at really rapid paces.
And so it's not just IPOs that are starting to come back. M&A, I looked at the data, and we're seeing record unicorn M&A, the most notable example of that being Google Wiz, which was a $32 billion deal. What do you think? Do you have some more big exits coming up in your portfolio, Rich?
You know, Katie, you have good sources, so often you seem to call me in times I cannot comment. But yeah, I do think, you know, top of funnel, as we were talking about out there, I'm sure in both our portfolios, there are a lot more first dates and second dates than ever before. Whether those go, you know, all the way to consummation, we'll see. But there's definitely a lot more activity. I think the change of the administration. I know there's a lot to talk about on that topic, but as relates,
tell me more. What do you think?
Well, at least as it relates to the FTC, I think it's perceived as having a little bit more openness to large-scale M&A among certain players. And I think that's opened up the appetite for a number of acquirers to engage, whereas before they were pretty stalled. So yes, I think the second half of this year is going to see a lot more large M&A. That really wasn't the case the couple of years before.
What do you think in your portfolio as well? Are you looking at more M&A?
Completely agree with Rich. I think when you look at the leading indicators of, again, both on the public side, number of confidential S1s filed, on the M&A side, the number of conversations happening, we've seen a big uptick in activity. But I would say it's also, like many things, under the covers, a tale of multiple cities. There's the big, the headline M&A that we all love seeing, especially investors and founders. And there's at the big prices in the hottest sectors like security, AI, infrastructure, those type of things. But we're also starting to see what I call a little more rational, accretive M&A. So as we all know, there were hundreds, thousands actually of companies founded or funded during the 2020-21 period. And you're starting to see a lot of those companies that maybe are realizing they're not going to be at the scale to go public, have good strategic relationships with larger acquirers, both public, and then also you're seeing M&A of some of these big private companies we just talked about doing sort of billion-dollar acquisitions. So I think you're seeing more acquirers, you're seeing more rationality in the mindset of some companies that are operating and see a better together story. So just more activity across the board.
Right. And in terms of private companies, there was recently OpenAI bought Johnny Ive's business for $6 billion. You know, historically,
that's a pretty unique one.
Pretty unique one. Okay, what do you think? What do you think about that one? What made it happen?
Well, obviously, you have a generational talent, and you have a direction of where OpenAI has an aspiration to go, and they decided it was worth that generational talent. That's my outside-in view of it. But I was just commenting that we'd love things like that to happen for the torso of our portfolios. It's not realistically happening in that way. I think, if I may just say, I think when you were back in 2022 and 23, a lot of founders and VCs are kind of waiting for the 2021 multiples and valuations to come back. Now that we've gotten to where we are now, 2 years after that, I think reality is starting to set in that that's just not going to come back naturally, and you got to accept the reality of how the market values you at this point. Which, let's be clear, it's not easy to accept that, both as the investor or the founder, but that's starting to happen, and that's why some M&A is at reasonable prices is starting to occur.
So they're willing to sell below their last valuation?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, if you realize you're never going to hit that high watermark again, there's some pain involved in that, again, for the investor and for the management team. But yeah, I think that's the only way this inventory of the high-priced multi-unicorns that might not be worth that anymore are going to get cleared out ultimately.
Yeah, Laela, you were nodding. So you're saying that founders are maybe not as much in denial anymore. And would they also do down round IPOs, like Chime coming up?
I think we've seen several down round IPOs. I mean, I think if we look at how the cycle played through post 2021, Rich and I sat on a public board together. I think the reality is public companies had to face the music immediately, right? All of a sudden, the market has changed. You cycle through that in a quarter or two. You deal with employee compensation. You deal with realistic M&A targets. You deal with what the financial profile you have to run the company to. The private markets, that type of macro change just takes much longer to flow through. But I mean, we've looked at several IPOs that have happened that are, most of them were below the peak 2021 valuations. And I think if you looked at M&A, in many cases, that's the case as well. And that still is a great outcome for founders, teams, investors in many cases. The down round, can feel more like an emotional thing than a real punitive financial thing or the reality of the business. And I think we're starting to see that flow through in much more significant ways, I think, across the ecosystem.
So of the 1,000 unicorns that have yet to exit, what do you think is the most common scenario? What are you seeing here? Because there's 1,000 companies, for those of you who don't know, that are valued at $1 billion on paper, but that doesn't mean much until they have a liquidity event. So are some of them going to be zombies? That's what I hear. Zombie unicorns is the term.
I mean, some will. If you just look at the math, if you take 1,000, right? What was it? I think the number of tech IPOs, you probably know this better than me, in 2021 was around 90 or something like that.
Plus the SPACs.
Plus the SPACs, which I don't think we'll have a comeback of those.
Put those in your
It's a dirty word at this point. It's a better word.
And then there's been a handful this year. Hopefully, as Rich said, we'll begin to see that accelerate. There's don't know the official number. When you talk to bankers and you look at our portfolios, there's certainly many that are S1 ready. But that is, even if we took a peak 100 and you thought of 1,000 out there, there are just a small minority of these companies, I think, that will be standalone public companies. So you'll start to see various activity. You'll start to see some that I think probably will be more what people are calling zombie unicorns, that are able to use the cash they've already raised, but to kind of operate at a subscale of a public company, but profitable, so at low EBITDA margins, but can go on indefinitely. I think you'll see consolidation, and you're already starting to see some of that. And then I think you'll see the rational M&A that we're talking about, where people really come to terms with the more rational valuation of the company, and you'll see more M&A activity. But that will take, as we talked about on the private sector trends playing out, I think it will take a long time. And a lot of it depends on the culture of the company, the founder, whether they can really retain and recruit talent to keep that momentum. And I think a lot of those stories are starting to unfold.
Just build on Laela's comment, fully agree, just maybe estimate some numbers to say, I think maybe out of that 1,000, 20% fully die, they end, and they don't get
20% of unicorns are going to die.
I think 20% of the 1,000 unicorns will not ultimately make money. Those are your words. I'm just going to say, and then I think 20 to 25% ultimately will succeed in some form, whether it's money-making M&A or ultimately independence from an IPO perspective. And then I think you got about half, 50, 55% of the middle that's stuck. And, some of those will ultimately have reality set in, and you have, attractive M&A occur at some realistic price, and some will be a bit zombie-ish of that middle 55% and grind on for a while and sort of stay in that category. But I think, you have good outcomes for maybe a quarter, I think, from a money-making perspective off the 2021 peak.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier, you have to retain talent. What are they doing? Because a big part of poaching employees from Google, for example, as you say, oh, well, we're private. We can go up in value, and someday we'll IPO, and your stock is going to be worth so much money. So how do you even get these top people to work at these unicorns at this point?
I mean, I think talent is a really important question. And it really varies by companies. I mean, I think one of the things we haven't talked too much about, but we're at a tech conference 2025, so we have to say AI at least 15 times, or Rich and I won't get invited back. And so there are these big sort of things like AI that really are completely new vectors of transformation, potential tailwinds. I do think these are founders, they're innovators, they're entrepreneurs. So a lot of these companies that have a lot of funding are trying to reinvent second waves and think about how they can take the innovation of whatever they created to get some decent amount of funding in 2021 and continue to innovate. And if they have good cultures and good talent, I think you're seeing actually more retention in some cases than we did in the peak 2021 bubble when jobs were everywhere, and there was so much money flying around that compensation wars were a fairly frequent thing. So in some ways, I think if the founder vision is still there and the sort of articulation of a strategy that employees believe in, we're seeing retention. In other cases, like so many snowball effects in a downward spiral, I think it is hard to retain great employees when the business results are not coming through. So I think in those situations, you're starting to see the reality of the leadership team having to face the music potentially earlier and figure out some of these M&A or alternative offers, because it's hard to keep talent, hard to keep customers, hard to keep the business afloat.
I mean, so an employer's market, do you think that means we're headed to recession? And do you even care if you invest on a 10-year time horizon as a VC?
I don't think realistically, especially when we do truly early investments, it takes 12 to 15 years in order for these companies to get to Circle's moment.
15, is that what you
today.
do your LPs now?
Well, sometimes you have M&A sooner in terms of some of the most attractive companies that emerge in the portfolio. But yes, to take a company from Series A to being public, and then obviously you have lockup, and when you choose to distribute, there can be a very, very long periods of time. So I think it's not a short-term game at all.
And your only LP is Google, so you have less pressure in that sense. But there are many, many venture firms that aren't lucky like that, or maybe it's not luck, but a lot of the emerging smaller funds are going away. We looked at the data and we saw that, if you're not Excel or CapitalG or a top tier firm, there's not a lot of money available right now. What are the ramifications for the broader ecosystem if emerging funds go away? Okay.
Challenge the premise of that?
You want to challenge it?
I don't think I necessarily
Am I wrong?
See that, right? I think well, first of all, broadly, you have a lot of questions about performance about big private equity. And so when a lot of these endowments are looking at how much they're allocating to alts, we see a lot of people thinking about how to maybe reduce somewhat their exposure to large private equity and looking for other places to deploy. Sometimes that's mid-market, and sometimes that's our world of growth and VC tech investing. So we do see a lot of capital trying to come down to this market. And people that did not used to be LPs of venture capital back 15 years ago, sovereign wealth, Japanese insurance, different forms of Canadian pension, as 3 examples. In the last 5 years, we've gotten very active, sort of coming in to invest in general partnerships in the VC world. So I don't know. I wish some degree that I wish that some capital was leaving the VC world, because it would make it easier for us competitively. But I don't know that I see that.
So I think, to be clear, there's the top funds, which are raising more money than ever, and larger funds. And, as you know, there's new LPs coming in. And then there's also the smaller emerging funds that may not experience the same good fortune when they're trying to raise.
Yeah, I think potentially what you're alluding to, Katie, I did see a stat somewhere that I think 75% of capital that has come in, LP capital that's come into the ecosystem the past year, has gone into the top 30 funds. So It's sort of a concentration issue. And that makes sense to me, and the reason why. So as you mentioned, we feel fortunate at CapitalG, Google and Alphabet are a single LP, but we invest for financial return. We don't invest for strategic reasons. And that has been a big advantage to us because we have a robust set of advisors inside of Google and Alphabet that help us in diligence, especially in areas like AI, and most importantly, help our companies post-investment. And the reason I mention that is venture has become very competitive, and not just in the last year, but over the past decade, increasingly competitive. And I think that's what brings in what Rich is speaking to, which is just there's been a lot of capital in the ecosystem. So during that 10 years, there were a lot of new fund managers that came, and then a lot of the biggest funds just got a lot more capital. So everyone is competing very hard for the very best deals. So there's concentration of capital, and then what we've seen is real scale advantage in the big winners. Everyone wants to be in the Stripes and Databricks and of the world, and has to figure out how to differentiate. So I think that a lot of the funds have been, the biggest funds have been successful in getting in the winners, and LPs are excited to continue to double down on those platforms, and those platforms are having to increasingly differentiate to win the very best deals. So I think we are seeing sort of scale and a flight to quality in both the investment side and on the fund management side as a general trend.
Is there too much capital in the ecosystem relative to the opportunity? And is that going to cause more bubbles?
You know, all the perspective I think one has on that question is a function of where you sit. I think stepping back, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur in this ecosystem that we're all, lucky to be part of. I mean, the amount of technology disruption, the degree of GDP impact that's going to have, and the amount of capital available to fund it has never been higher than ever before. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, it's awesome. From a venture capitalist perspective, it does feel a very competitive market. And so I think as that market is highly competitive, it will ultimately affect returns in the category. And I think we're seeing some of that at different stages. Maybe the later stage of the venture capital market certainly has that. Now, depending on whether you're the LP or the GP or the entrepreneur, you have a different view of your question. I think broadly it's good for the ecosystem that there's this much capital chasing these opportunities.
All right, well, thank you so much. It's great to hear your perspective.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, everybody.
Please welcome to the stage Peter Stern, President and CEO at Peloton Interactive, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Mark Gurman.
Okay, we're very honored to have Peter Stern here with us, the CEO of Peloton. He started at the turn of the calendar, right? This year at
January
Peloton.
1.
January 1, and we're very lucky to have him for his first interview. So, about 6 months. What kind of workout has it been so far? A HIIT, a Tabata, yoga, meditation?
It's definitely not meditation, I'll tell you that. I would say we're going with cross-training here. So where am I going with that, right? Cross-training means you got to work on your cardio and build up your endurance, but you also have to work on strength. And so we've been doing a lot of that in the company, right? We're working on establishing the mission and the purpose and the values of the company and the strategy that's going to carry us through the long term, but we're also building the muscle that we need to be successful, reigniting the innovation engine of the company and getting people, both members and all of our team members, including our instructors, newly excited about Peloton. So I'm going with cross-training.
I want to talk about Peloton, but I think it's important. Who is Peter Stern? Before CEO of Peloton, what's your background? Where'd you come from? How'd you get the job? Why are you the person for the role?
Well, I feel like a lot of the things that I've done in my career, Mark, have basically been leading up to this moment. I spent many years in the cable industry. And during that time, working in media and telecom, I really understood the importance in subscription businesses of building a relationship that was a lasting one with every single subscriber. As you know, that's a business where gaining or losing one subscriber can make a great quarter or not a great quarter at the margin. And so that was fantastic for me. And I got a chance to try virtually every function there: product, HR, strategy, corporate development. I went from there and had 7 amazing years here in the Bay Area working for Apple, and we were able to launch a whole bunch of new businesses there.
I've heard of them.
Right, whether it was Apple TV Plus or Apple News Plus or Apple Arcade or Apple Fitness Plus or Apple One, or working on Apple Books and iCloud. So again, a chance to apply those subscription skills, but in an entrepreneurial way in a really exciting company that brought together equipment plus software plus content in innovative ways. So that was a great run and really good practice, I think, for this. I actually spent a year and a half at Ford. That was also an amazing experience for me to work in an iconic hardware business, right? That's what a car and a truck really is. It's a hardware business. And being so close to that part of the business was great training also for what we have at Peloton, because we are both an equipment company and we're a subscriptions company. So, that's what brings me here. You asked how I got here. When I found out there was an opportunity to potentially be a CEO, I raised my hand, I called the company and said, this is my dream, give me a shot, coach.
So it's no secret that Peloton was a high flyer at the beginning of the pandemic. The company's management at the time thought nobody's ever going back to the gym again. They started building a big facility in Ohio. They overextended, and everything came crashing down when the world economy and businesses began to reopen, right? Now you're sort of trying to rebuild the company, right? What is Peloton today, and how do you fix the prior management's issues with what they left you, or what did they leave you, and where do you take it from here?
Well, let me be clear. I am grateful for prior management. The fact is that the founders of Peloton produced something that created a category, right? Connected fitness didn't exist before John Foley and that team created something that has just beautiful product market fit. Yes, the company grew too large under the circumstances, and my predecessor took a lot of the really hard steps to right-size the company and set us up so that now we can execute on the strategy of empowering people to live fit, strong, long, and happy. And we're doing that for 6 million members in multiple countries. We're in a really good place now to build on that really strong foundation that was established by my predecessors.
So what is the strategy? What is Peter Stern's strategy for Peloton? Are you going to keep it a hardware, software, services company? Have you thought about spinning out the hardware and focusing just on the app? What is your vision?
Yeah. So let's start with the question of app versus are we an equipment company? And then I'll get to the strategy, which sort of flows from that. So Peloton is a unique company. We have what I'll call our magic formula of equipment plus software plus human coaching. Those 3 ingredients wrapped in a community that is encouraging and results in people feeling motivated to come back and do something that you need some external motivation around. So that combination of equipment plus software and human coaching and that community is what distinguishes us from an app-based fitness or wellness company. And just to be really practical about what that means, if you look at app-based companies in the wellness space, their monthly churn rates are very high. Even at a net churn rate of 5 to 8% is really not uncommon for those services. And so their growth potential is capped. We have, over a 12-month period, delivered about a 1.6% net churn rate. And what that means is that our customers love our product. The investment that they make in themselves and in that equipment with Peloton is something that then results in them being more committed to the product and to their own fitness and wellness. And that physical equipment beckons to them every day to do the right thing by themselves. And again, results in greater longevity, both with how long they stay with Peloton and, of course, if they exercise right, with their lives. So that's a little bit about the answer. Yes, we're an equipment company plus amazing software plus human coaching with community. We are not, our future is not to try to scale the app at the expense of that equipment business. Now, the strategy. You asked about that, Mark. One, we're about improving member outcomes, right? Helping people get and stay fit and well and strong and happy. There's a lot to that, right? It means we have to keep winning in cardio. We need to extend into more spaces. I talk a lot about strength. It means we need to become an ever more personal coach. Second thing, we need to meet members everywhere. There's been, over the last few years, a bit of retrenching in, for example, our retail presence. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to meet people in more places: retail, travel, gyms, internationally, online. And then last but not least, we need to make members for life. Again, that's getting members to make the right choices every day. It's also making sure that we're building an operation system that can ensure that every customer has a flawless experience from the moment they purchase our equipment and through the entire life cycle.
How have you begun to reshape Peloton? Obviously, you've only been there 6 months, but what have you been doing? What is a day like in the life of Peter Stern at the office?
So the ways that I'm trying to reshape the company and really working with our leadership team on this is building from the ground up an incredibly strong foundation for long-term success. And what does that mean? It means that we've restated the purpose of the company: empowering people to live fit, strong, long, and happy. The mission of the company, reestablished our values around lifting people up and bringing your best and believing in what we do because it's so important to millions of people's lives. We have then, based on that, started to build the strategy that I described and identified within that strategy 25 initiatives that are ranked from 1 to 25 because you can't give everything the same amount of attention as the others. But that has allowed us as a company to focus on the things that are most important and that are aligned with that strategy. So the answer to how do I spend my day? Well, the first thing I do try to do is get some exercise in. A typical day for me is like this morning, getting up and doing a little bit of cardio, ran to the gym actually, and then did also some strength training. And then I'm mostly spending my time working on those 25 initiatives with our team members, trying to define how we can serve our members better. And if I can spend my time on that kind of substance, that's a really great day.
What are the top 3 of your 25?
So not going to announce all of the details of these sorts of things, but I'll tell you a little bit about the top one, and that is that we have reignited the innovation engine for us as a company. And so focusing on the products and the experiences that we're going to offer over the next few months is absolutely my number one. Another one that I think is really important that we're focused on is how we use AI to deliver personal experiences for our members. That is another one that I'm spending an enormous amount of time on, so huge priority for us.
Talk to us a little bit more about that, about AI, and what does the future of fitness look like with AI at its core?
Yeah, so every member is different. They all have different intents for why they choose to become a member of Peloton. That can change over time, so we need to not just get to know you, but we need to evolve along with you. Every member is different in terms of their baseline level of fitness, their level of commitment, their level of confidence. And so one of the things that I really value is the human coaching that our amazing instructors provide at Peloton. But I want to find ways to scale them by creating individualized programs for each of our members so that they can get the right class from the right instructor that's personalized for them. A really simple example of how we're doing it right now is that we do something called power zones on bike, or we do pace targets on tread, where we actually set individualized speeds or levels of effort for each of our members. But then we've introduced a new set of features called personalized plans. And we've had, at this point, I think over 600,000 of our members have started a personalized plan. And the system basically understands your goals and then builds a plan out for you. And we deliver real results with these sorts of things. So just to give you an example of how this stuff really does make a difference, for example, when one of our members buys a treadmill, within the first 4 weeks of using the treadmill, we're on average reducing their mile time by 30 seconds. Right? So we can make real differences in somebody's conditioning. And that translates not just into more confidence and better performance as an athlete, it translates into a longer life.
What about data collection so you can get some more information about the user and then use AI to optimize their workouts? Do you need a wearable? Do you need a new heart rate strap? Do you need more sensors on the treads and bikes themselves?
Yeah, we're very lucky in this regard in that our members are doing a lot of that hard work for us. So we have a great partnership with Google Fitbit, for example. We have done integration with Garmin smartwatches because a lot of top athletes choose that. And we also are working with the Apple Health app to make sure that we can import data from there. A very large fraction of our members have an Apple Watch. And that Apple Health app basically can act for many, many members as basically a Rosetta Stone for us, allowing us to get access to the data that we need with the permission of the member. Once we have that data, now we can use the third-party information that our members are providing us. But we have such rich first-party information on our members as well, based on the workouts that they're doing on our machines and how much they're pushing themselves. If they have a watch, we can look at their heart rate and we can impute then how much effort they're expending. And if they don't have a watch, we can basically compare them with members who do have one. And so we can basically determine how hard you're working. And we can, for example, calculate things like a cardio fitness score. So I'm really excited about how we'll be able to use data to deliver ever more personalized experiences for our members.
So you said you did a workout this morning. Obviously, Peloton's based in New York, so you're here, probably stayed in a hotel.
Yeah.
How important is the hotel business and the gym business to Peloton under Peter Stern, and compare it to someone buys one for their home business?
Yeah, so the nice thing about this is these are not either-or situations. I think it might have been perceived that way in the past, but it's absolutely not. Let's take travelers in hotels as an example. If you're the type of person who is in a hotel, then you're a person who is investing in yourself. You have some ability to pay for a service, and you're going to a hotel gym. You are really committed to taking care of yourself. That is a situation where we should have Peloton equipment everywhere. I'm really happy with the partnerships we have right now with Hilton and with Hyatt, where we have Peloton equipment in most of their gyms. I do think in hotel gyms, basically, Peloton equipment should be a must-have amenity. It's the sort of thing where you shouldn't even you wouldn't even want to stay in the hotel if it doesn't have the Peloton equipment that you count on having at home. And then that's a great way for us to meet new members because some people might not have had a chance to try our equipment out, but while you're traveling at a hotel gym where you've got a little time on your hands, that's a great way to do it. Now, with regard to commercial gyms, there's also tremendous opportunities there. We have a number of pilots taking place with all sorts of gyms, including the Y, so we can try to make Peloton equipment as accessible as possible. But one of the things that I'm really excited about, and this is not something that we've really talked about publicly before. Not a lot of people know that we own Precor, which is one of the leading providers of equipment to gyms everywhere. We are bringing Precor in to basically be the lead partner in a commercial operating division for Peloton. And the Precor business has the skills to be able to install and service equipment to the exacting standards of gym operators who have a very heavy duty cycle on that type of equipment. And so we're going to be able to bring Peloton equipment into more gyms with the capabilities of Precor. At the same time, we're now bringing Peloton workouts onto Precor equipment, which will really differentiate that Precor equipment in the minds of gym operators and hopefully open up even more new audiences for them. So, I would basically say this is a long overdue post-merger integration that we're doing with Precor and making it the foundation for our commercial business.
How do most people buy a Peloton, right? Are they subscribing to it with your rental program? Are they doing installments? Are they buying it outright? And then earlier this week, you launched a new program, sort of a resale website, like a Craigslist for Peloton, I guess you can call it. Talk to us about that.
I would say actually the two largest channels are people buying Peloton equipment from our website. You go to onepeloton.com and it's all there, and it's a really great way to buy it. But one of the largest ways for us to acquire new members is in the secondhand market. So you raised, Mark, this announcement that we had a couple days ago about something called Repowered. And the idea here is that there are lots of Peloton bikes in particular that are out there in the world that are being underutilized. And that does no one any good. I'd love for people to get back on the bike. It's the right thing for them. Certainly it's great for us as a company. But if you're not going to use a Peloton bike, we want to make it really easy for you to get that into the hands of someone who will love it. And historically, that's taken place, for example, on Facebook Marketplace. And that's absolutely fine for people who want to do that. But it means that you need to transact with a stranger on both ends and potentially have that stranger come into your home. And so what we're trying to do is streamline that and deliver a more premium experience for those secondhand customers. And what this does is it allows us to get our bikes that are built to last into the hands of people who will love it at a price that's a fraction of a new bike. And there's no capital expenditure for us as a company. There's no environmental impact associated with producing those bikes because they're already out there in the world. And so it's a great way to help somebody get fit and grow our business.
Last question for you. Peloton, standalone business for years to come? Is it potentially an acquisition target for a larger company? What do you see as the...
I mean, I was not hired to sell this company. I was hired to bring this company back to growth, to reinvigorate it, and it is happening. So we are a standalone company for years to come.
Great. Thank you, Peter Stern.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Please welcome to the stage RJ Scaringe, founder and CEO of Rivian, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
Thank you. All right, so we've been talking backstage. As I mentioned, I have 4 kids, and I drive a minivan. And so we've been trying to be cooler. And my kids are all in on the Rivian. We've test driven the Rivian, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet, so maybe you'll convince me.
Help you out, yeah, we would love to.
The first time I saw a Rivian was the day Jeff Bezos launched into space. We were in Van Horn, Texas, and there was like a pack of Rivians in 2021. And you obviously have a partnership with Amazon. But talk to me about the journey sort of from then to now. You've got the SUV, the pickup, you've got the R2 and R3 coming out. Give us the roadmap.
Yes, we launched
Pun intended.
Yeah, there you go. We launched our first product in 2021, and in 2021 with the flagship products R1T, R1S. And so I think you saw those right before we launched. We then launched a commercial van in partnership with Amazon. So if you see any of the electric vans driving around here, those are actually designed and built by us. And then we made a big update to the R1 platform last year where we redid all the network architecture, the ECU topology, massive rebuild of our perception stack, a lot more compute. But what we're most excited about right now is we're about to launch a product we call R2. And it precedes a product we call R3. But the R2, R3 sibling combination is a set of much lower priced vehicles, with R2 being a 5-passenger SUV and then R3 being more of a crossover. But I've never been as excited as I am about a product as I feel about this vehicle with R2. It is so cool, the combination of packaging, the look, the performance, the capability. So if you don't buy an R1, I have to get you in an R2.
I feel like we live in like an increasing Rivian land. You know, I live in the East Bay and the North. Rivians are everywhere. They're all over Tahoe. How much is it really picking up in, Middle America, in Texas? Like, how are you going to get folks to, not buy the Ford F-150 and buy the Rivian?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly in the Bay Area or in Southern California or Seattle. You see Rivians everywhere, which is awesome. My kids and I used to, on the drive to school, they would count how many Rivians they saw. And it's like a 10-mile drive. And so 2 years ago, you would count a few. And now it's sort of like 22, 23. So it's been really remarkable seeing that. But, as we look across the U.S., the adoption has been strong. So it really scales with population. So big cities like Chicago or, you mentioned Texas, Austin, Houston, Dallas, these are also really big markets for us. And what's been amazing and was the goal was that the Rivian brand and, of course, the product is connecting with, non-EV buyers. It's pulling, most of our customers have never owned an EV before. And it's pulling people in that come from a broad spectrum of backgrounds. Importantly, we have Republicans that love Rivians. We have Democrats that love Rivians. And the consistency of how we've messaged our brand, messaged what we stand for, this idea of the products both enabling and inspiring people to go skiing, to go do the kinds of things you want to take photographs of, has really connected with a broad cross-section of the United States.
What do you think of the folks who have those bumper stickers on their Teslas who say, I bought this before Elon went crazy? Has that been helpful to you?
We've certainly see some more of those. I saw a sticker there that says, "I identify as a Rivian." Which is funny.
That's good. That's good. Well, I was planning to ask you how you felt about your competitor being so close to the president, but over the last 24, 48 hours, I feel like I need to be asking, like, what do you think about the Elon-Trump breakup? Is that, like, good for you?
I don't know. Yeah, it's, oh, geez. Yeah, that's a good one.
Really, though, I mean...
It's dynamic, let's say that.
It's dynamic.
Yeah, it looks, it's interesting.
He's certainly been lobbying for certain things like rolling back credits and loans that actually would be really important to you. You're building new plants. I mean, how are you liaising with the Trump administration? And are you at all concerned about the things that he has been pushing for? Or maybe less concerned?
Yeah, it's a fun question. We, when we take a big step back and you look at what the administration's pushing for, I think it's easy to get caught into the day-to-day of which tariffs are moving which way, and some of the language that's used around electric vehicles. But really, the administration wants to see investment in U.S. technology, investment in U.S. jobs. And so we have more than 15,000 employees in the United States. We highly vertically integrated. We built a technology stack that's world-class. In fact, that technology stack on the software and electronics side underpins a $5.8 billion software licensing deal that we did with Volkswagen last year. So it's, I think it's the largest software licensing deal in the history of the automotive industry. And then we're building our products, including all the components that go into them, here in the United States. We have a plant in Illinois now, and as you said, we're building a very large production facility in Georgia, which is a swing state. So I think that, certainly, I think there's some changes around like incentives for consumers that, are not great in the short term, but in the long term, you're building a U.S. company, building U.S. technology, and that's consistent. So in all of our discussions with the administration, we try to focus on that part of it.
So Rivian had the hottest IPO of the year a few years back. The stock hasn't returned to that sort of initial glory. Are you annoyed that Rivian doesn't trade like a tech company, but Tesla does?
Yeah. I think for us, we went public, and immediately following our IPO, we had the big challenge of a supply chain crisis. Our ramp didn't go as quickly as we'd hoped. And there's been a lot of focus on the much shorter term from investors around what's our path to profitability, what's our path to positive free cash flow. And so in the last 2 quarters, we've shown a lot of progress. So in Q1, we had $206 million of gross profit, positive gross profit, which is great. But I think demonstrating that the business can be self-propelling, it can fund itself through the profits of the products has been really important. But we've invested so much on the tech stack that I think this will really serve as a big unlock once some of the overhang of concerns around cash or profitability starts to disappear. And at the end of the day, the stock market's not always logical. It's incredibly volatile. But in the long term, it tends to get things right. So as long as we keep executing, you said it, but the products resonate extremely well with consumers. So the last 2 years in a row, Consumer Reports does this brand survey. This isn't us, this is Consumer Reports, and they look at brand satisfaction, and we've been by far the highest level of brand satisfaction amongst any car company for the last 2 years in a row by like a significant amount, with the highest rate of repurchase by like 15%. So we love that. We have the market share leading product with the R1S. It's about 35% market share in its category. So if we can take that brand success, that market share that we have, and translate that to a much bigger market with R2, continue to invest in our technology stack. We have a huge amount of focus on software, autonomy, AI. The rest will take care of itself. It may just take a little longer than we'd like, though.
Tariffs have been especially hard for hardware builders.
Yeah.
How have they impacted you? What does it mean for example, like your partnership with Volkswagen, your plans for the European market?
Yeah, I mean, the tariffs have been, in the long list of things I didn't expect to have happen. We have a daily stand-up meeting that looks at what changed in the last 24 hours around trade. And so, it's one of the things I say a lot is like when we think about trade and tariffs, I think often like we take almost an academic, like the world seems to take an academic, economist view of what the economy looks like, which is, we're trading T-shirts and coffee cups. Like it's a really simple economy, and production locations are really fungible, and you can move things around really easily. But in really complex products, and in particular products that have these deep, long supply chains, like aerospace, like automotive, you can't move supply chains that quickly. And so for us, the challenge for the tariffs is we understand the intent of more content being produced in the U.S., but it's not something we can flip immediately. And so we have hundreds of suppliers who in turn have thousands of suppliers. And, like take a headlight. A headlight looks like it's simple. We buy a headlight from a U.S. supplier, but it has 5 tiers of suppliers with about 70 companies that participate in making that headlight. Much of the content comes from all over the world. So these are just really complex changes that are going to take months or years to implement. Production locations that reflect the policy.
Mm-hmm. The price point is still high for average people. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing to bring the cost down, but still, keep the safety standards, keep the quality standards?
Yeah, so our R1s, that's the R1S, the R1T, that's our flagship product. The average sale price of this is about $90,000. What we're launching with R2, it starts at $45,000. So this, again, it's a big market expander. The average price of a new car in the United States is around $49,000. And so with R2 coming in, starting at $45,000 and having a few different trims across that price range, puts us in a great spot to see a giant step in volume, which, of course, will be great for us as a business, but also really start to help us absorb some of the fixed costs of these very large engineering teams we built.
Mm-hmm. Charging anxiety still very real. I felt it myself. We test drove it to Tahoe. And also EVs have become this political football, especially in this administration.
A little bit, yeah.
Why is this so hard? And how far off is just not having to worry about charging? Like, we don't think about gas.
Yeah.
Like, when will that be the case?
Yeah.
EVs?
If I were to go back in time 5, maybe 6 years, I would have wrongly predicted there would have been more investment into charging infrastructure. And I would have said, if we were sitting here in 2018, I would have said, there's going to be a bunch of investment that's going to create charging such that charging is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And fast forward over the last couple of years, we haven't seen that happen. And so we took the decision to build our own charging network. And so there's 2 charging networks in the United States that have uptime, meaning when you show up, the chargers are working, greater than 99%. One of those is Tesla, and that's by far the largest network. It's a great network. And the other is what we call our Rivian Adventure Network. Our Adventure Network is about 4% the size of Tesla's network, so we're still building it. But amazingly, we believe our network, along with Tesla's, will be the 2 largest charging networks in the United States. And that will take time to build out, but you're starting to see them. You're going to start to see a lot more Rivian charging stations here in the Bay Area, but they're growing across the whole U.S.
You obviously have this relationship with Amazon. I'd love to get an update on that. And I know you and Jeff Bezos personally kind of hatched this deal.
Yeah.
What's sort of the status of your relationship now that he's, moved on in a way?
Yeah.
And he's backing a new company called Slate Auto.
Yeah, so Amazon's our largest shareholder, and they're a really deep partner. I referenced it before. We build commercial vans, and Amazon's our primary customer for those commercial vans. And just to give some scale to this, Amazon runs the largest centrally managed electric fleet in the world. So, there's tens of thousands of these. You'll see them all over the place here. And so to build that and to put in place charging infrastructure to change the way that they ran their fleet as rapidly as they have has been, it's been something that required us to really be close with the Amazon ops team. And so I couldn't be happier with the nature of that relationship, and we're excited about what's to come. We're going to continue scaling that. As it pertains to Jeff, I've known Jeff for a while. He's been a great advisor and a great friend to me. Obviously he built one of the largest businesses in the world. So it's been really helpful to some of the questions you asked, navigating some of the volatility in the market, and I think importantly, navigating even things like share price and a phrase he uses all the time, which is you need to be comfortable being misunderstood. And so, I look at our share price, and we're really bullish on what we're building. We're really confident what we're building. We do believe we're building a very large business that's going to produce many millions of cars. And it's okay that the market doesn't fully appreciate all the things we're doing today. But, if we keep executing, we know it will.
So
that's been his guidance to me all along.
He's backing this company, Slate Auto. They're making a $20,000 electric pickup. Is he hedging his bets against you?
I don't think so. I think one of the things that happens as the tech world looks at the vehicle world, in tech, it's very often that you'll have one or two dominant players that emerge and control the entirety of a space or a segment. In automotive, it's very unlikely you'll have one or two car companies that dominate an entire market. Just to give this some scale, there's about 90 to 100 million cars sold every year. The largest car company in the world makes 10-ish million vehicles a year. And so we think there needs to be a handful of highly successful companies that are building many million units a year. And in the US, we have the extreme challenge of there's a lack of choice. So if you were to buy, I say this all the time, if you were to look to buy an electric vehicle at a price of under $50,000 today, you really don't have any choices. There's one really compelling set of choices with the Tesla Model 3, Model Y. Mm-hmm. And you see that manifest in they have extreme market share, 50-ish% market share. But it's just a reflection of there's not very many other options. And so because of that, electrification adoption in the United States is really asymptoted at around 8% because there's only so many customers that want that form factor, that look, that brand. And for us to go from 8% to 50 or 60 or 70, even given how compelling the Tesla products are, customers want choice. They want more things. So I think it's great that there's more choices coming. I hope some of the large incumbent car companies help make compelling products. And part of our Volkswagen deal was that, which we said we can take our tech stack and help the second largest car company in the world create more compelling products across different brands, Porsche, Audi, of course, Volkswagen. And so that's the way we look at it.
Full self-driving has, made some advancements, especially more recently. You guys take a different approach than Tesla. Talk a little bit about that and just what the advent of AI potentially means for self-driving and car development in general.
Yeah, we could spend hours on this. So I'll be quick.
We have 2 minutes and 3 seconds.
I will be very quick. Just in just a few seconds, if we look at what's happened in self-driving, there's really been two big phases of how we've looked at this from a technology point of view. So from, call it 2015 to maybe 2022, all the different self-driving efforts were essentially had a very similar architecture, which was a perception stack, so cameras and perhaps radars and LiDAR, but a perception stack that are identify and classify objects. Those objects that were identified and classified would then have vectors associated to them, so velocity and acceleration, X, Y, and Z. And then those objects, along with the vectors, would be handed to what we called a planner. And the planner is a rules-based environment that was written by software developers that defined the rules of the world, essentially how you behave and how the other things on the road might behave, what are their trajectories likely to be. And the planner would then come up with, using these rules, how the vehicle should operate. And so it was limited around how it was programmed, and it was limited by the perception stack that was feeding into it. What happened that completely threw out and made everything that happened prior to 2022 irrelevant is the introduction of transformers and the way we now look at AI. And so the approach that now is absolutely undoubtedly going to win is what you may often hear called an end-to-end approach, where you have still a perception stack, but that perception stack creates an early fuse view of the world, meaning the cameras provide raw information, maybe there's radars, maybe there's LiDARs, but a perception stack feeds into an early fused version of the world that's looked at through the lens of a large parameter, like multi-billion parameter foundation model that is trained through the data coming off the vehicles and the drivers in the vehicles acting as a participant in that training. And so this new approach requires very different things from the AV, Autonomous Vehicle 1.0. It requires a really large data flywheel. So you need to have a deployed fleet. You need to completely vertically control the perception stack. You need tons of inference on the vehicle to be able to do this real-time decisioning. And then you need to have a way to move all this data off the vehicle and then process it with GPUs offline to create this large parameter model. So all that said, we recognized that change was happening. And so we built, I talked about a Gen 1 vehicle, which we launched with in 2021. That was the rules-based approach. And we now have our Gen 2 vehicles, which launched last summer. And that's entirely designed around AI. And so we're just starting to see, in Rivian's case, the strength of this data flywheel and the features and the capability that are about to continue to roll out through updates with this really AI-centric approach it's just remarkable. And the speed of progress is night and day compared to when we were trying to do this with software developers in a rules-based environment.
So last quick question, even though we're officially out of time. The Valley of Death is this so-called gap between like scaling and developing an expensive product and then actually selling it. And I try not to mention him too often, but it's really hard in a conversation with you not to mention Elon Musk. He has called getting through the Valley of Death and starting an electric car company like staring into the abyss and eating glass. He famously slept on the factory floor. What are you doing to get out of the Valley of Death?
Yeah.
Where are you sleeping personally? Yeah.
Depends. Yeah, I mean, look, starting a car company is really tough. It's not easy. It takes billions of dollars of capital. You need thousands of engineers. You have a really complex supply chain. You have to produce vehicles at very high levels of quality. And today we're producing about 50,000 cars a year. As you say, you're starting to see them on the roads. But for us, that really big step of volume comes with R2. Today we've just got to the place finally where we're producing a positive gross profit, which is awesome. But to see where we start to produce billions of dollars of free cash flow, it's a business that benefits from, or I shouldn't even say benefits, it's needed to have a high level of volume, especially when you have a high degree of vertical integration and a really large engineering team to develop all the technology. So, the next year for us is a really critical year. I'd say it's the most exciting year since I started the company. And, I can't wait to see even more Rivians on the road with the launch of R2.
All right. RJ Scaringe, everyone. Thank you. We didn't say where you were sleeping, but that's...
Please welcome to the stage Aravind Srinivas, co-founder and CEO of Perplexity, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Shireen Ghaffari.
Aravind, thanks so much for being on stage. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about Perplexity's origin story. You started Perplexity with the ambitious mission of taking on Google using AI. And what most people don't know is that you were actually an intern at Google DeepMind in 2019. It was your first job after studying for your PhD at UC Berkeley. Go Bears. Did you know when you were interning at Google that you would, just a few years later, start a multi-billion-dollar startup going against it?
Definitely not. But I did everything an intern would do, just sleep in the office. They had all these pods which you can use to sleep in the office. And they had a library, they had a lot of food, a lot of junk food too, which, definitely I put on a lot of weight while I was at London. And so it was one of the best times I had in my life. I think there's a lot of things. I would say DeepMind was almost like a different company. I even remember how Demis had all these crazy visions of how AI will just be a scientist by itself and it'll solve all theorems and proofs, and they were on a completely different trajectory. So now they got folded back into Google to get them back into this AI race on the product stuff. But to me, DeepMind meant a lot more in terms of just going for that core artificial general intelligence dream. And it was a fantastic time.
So you went on to work at OpenAI in its early days and then eventually decided to break out and start Perplexity. And for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what Perplexity is?
So Perplexity is an answer machine. You get answers that you can really trust. We were the first to reimagine search in the form of conversations and answers with trusted sources. And we did it in a way that essentially became the blueprint for every other chatbot out there. yes, everybody else has integrated search too, but when we started, people made fun of us saying, in AI, hallucination is meant to be a feature, not a bug. And so I even had a former Googler who was one of my early seed investors, and he said, this looks good, but the reason ChatGPT is going viral now is because people want to laugh at AI's mistakes. And your product is trying to like design it in a way where you do not make mistakes, because you're always pulling sources and summarizing what humans are saying. You're not telling what the AI thinks. So I don't think this will work. That was what was told to me. Like, he literally said you should go and build something like character.ai, like where people actually enjoy it, like AI saying arbitrary random stuff. And you know, I'm glad I didn't listen to that. And I believe that like this fundamentally a completely different tool. We didn't even build it as like a Google replacement, actually. We just built it because it was really useful to us. I was a very newbie founder, CEO. I didn't take any health insurance because I was like, I'm all in on this company. I don't care if the company doesn't work. Like, that's my health insurance, actually. And then my founders, the co-founders were married, so they had health insurance through their wives. So that was when my first employee we hired. He asked for insurance. And I had no idea like which HR tool to use, what are all these different plans, how to even like figure out which plan to go for. And of course, insurance is that one AdWord category that Google makes like billions of dollars a year. So they have literally zero incentive to tell you like which plan to pick or which provider to go for. And that's when we started building these tools that could just give you answers directly in a chat interface, but plug into the web. And so we kind of essentially built it as a tool we wanted, and our friends wanted it, our investors wanted it, and then we put it out into the world. Never thought about it as like, oh, like links, 10 blue links to answers. But once we put it out, that's when we realized, like based on what people are saying, hey, this is actually like a much better way to like consume the internet. Yeah. Like we're all living on the internet, and so I would rather just feel the internet through answers instead of links.
Got it. So yeah, you guys were really one of the first AI companies to do real-time AI search, focused on that, and linking back. Now everyone's doing that, right? Including Google, including OpenAI. So what are you doing to differentiate? And do you want to talk a little bit about Comet, your new browser, which I took a sneak peek at and is really interesting?
Sure. Look, with respect to Google, I mean, I don't mind saying this. Like every year, it's the same feature announced in the I/O. Like I think in 2023 they called it Search Generative Experience. In 2024 they called it AI Overview. This year they called it AI Mode. Next year they'll call it another name. But at the end of the day, the feature never gets shipped to the user, right? Like literally, this is not hard. Like they have all the models, they have the best index, they have all the best infrastructure. They have their own hardware, data centers, everything. 3 billion, 4 billion users. So why not just change it? Why change Google.com? Like make it like Perplexity. If that anyway, AI Mode is literally like even the font is like basically Perplexity now. That's the extent to which they've studied our product. Great. So why don't you go ahead and ship it? You cannot, because you lose all the ad revenue. Like if you can go and ask like what are the best sneakers for you to buy for, or like what are the best jackets for you to buy, or best airlines to pick for this something, or best hotels to stay at a place, how are you going to charge all these people for money? Or if you literally, in fact, like leave the AI answers. These days, if you just go and ask for the NBA score, before even triggering the score widget, they put the Ticketmaster ads right at the top because they need the money. And if that's the money that's paying for all the R&D spend on Gemini.
Right. But what Google does have is reach, right? So they have billions of users who use it every day.
But they cannot ship it. So that's been consistent over the last 3 years.
And let's talk about, though, I mean, they do ship a lot. But let's talk about what you are going to do to try to get that same kind of reach and that same kind of integration that users have with Google in your everyday life, which, as I understand it, the browser is a big part of that strategy. So can you tell us that why do you think browsers are the next frontier for successful AI companies?
Yeah, often what's said, like why did Sundar become the CEO of Google is because like he focused on the Chrome project, right? He was the one running the Chrome project, and that ended up being one of the biggest weapons for them in this battle against Microsoft. And it took them many years, like probably 10 years, to actually become the leading browser.
The browser is the front end to your internet, like experiencing the internet. The Omni box, the search box, is where almost all the Google queries are going. That's why if you go to Google Trends and see the top most queries by volume, it's always weather or like Amazon or Reddit or Instagram, Twitter, like these one-word queries. So most people are just using Google as a navigational tool. But if you can blend navigation, information, and activity like transactions and like doing actual browsing sessions all in like one clean interface using the browsing infrastructure, you can actually like go for it all in like one single tool. So that's and if you really want to transition AI from answers to actions to doing stuff for you, answers are essentially like 4 or 5 searches in one. Actions are like an entire browsing session in like one prompt. You really need to actually have a browser and hybridize the compute on the client and the server side in the seamless way possible. And that's that calls for rethinking the whole browser. We're not actually like thinking about Comet as yet another browser. It'll be a cognitive operating system. It'll be there for you every time, anytime for work or life, as an assistant on the side or like just going and doing browsing sessions for you. And I think that'll fundamentally make us rethink like how we even think about the internet. Like earlier we would browse the internet, but now people are increasingly living on the internet. Like a lot of our life actually exists there. And if you want to build a proactive, personalized AI, it needs to live together with you. And that's why we need to rethink the browser entirely.
I want to talk a little bit about growth. You all have tripled your valuation, I believe, twice in the past couple of years. Let's talk about where you're at in terms of how many people are using Perplexity. Can you give us the latest on how many people are actually searching on Perplexity, using it every day?
Yeah, I believe in May we did about like 780 million queries.
Sorry, what? Per month, is that?
Yeah, per month. Mm-hmm. And I think that's growing like at more than 20% month over month. So give it a year, we'll be doing we'll be doing like billion queries a week if we can sustain this growth rate. And that's pretty impressive because we were like first day in like 2022 we did 3,000 queries just this one single day. So from there to like doing 30 million a day now, it's been phenomenal growth. And we still think that same trajectory is possible even now, especially with all the kind of distribution partnerships we're like trying to seek, and like all the browser that we're working on. And like if people are in the browser, it's infinite retention. So everything on the search box, everything on the new tab page, everything you're doing on the sidecar, any web page you're in, these are all going to be extra queries per active user, as well as seeking new users who just are tired of like legacy browsers like Chrome. I think that's going to be the way to grow this over the coming year.
Yes, and I want to talk about those partnerships in a second. But before we do, just on the fundraising route, as I mentioned, you tripled your valuation last year, tripled it again a few months later. We've reported that you're now in talks to raise another $500 million at a $14 billion valuation. Taking a step back, is it challenging to raise these mega rounds that get bigger and bigger? It is expensive to run an AI company going against the big guys. What is it like fundraising in this market as a startup?
Fundraising is super interesting to you, but it's actually I would prefer not to like do it at all. You know, I think it's look. I think we're attracting the funding because the product is really good. I think our vision for the future is always like unique and like original, and we're not like chasing others. We're actually like setting the roadmap for other people, including like taking our font and like UI and everything. Sure. But literally, like you said search, but it's not just that. Even the agentic, the tool calls, how iteratively we call the tools, our research agents, like the recent feature we put out as labs. These are all setting the next steps for how people will use these tools. And I think the browser will be very unique in its own way too. So investors are excited about the possibility of like, completely changing the front end in which we experience the whole web. And the web is so valuable. And the other thing that's most important to consider about Perplexity is we're the only company like razor focused on all the accuracy aspects of AI. Like we really want us to be the accuracy layer for AI. And that's going to influence both human and AI decision making. And every day, like trillions of dollars worth of decisions are made across retail, finance markets, exchanges, everything. And if we can influence a big chunk of that, then that'll automatically means like we can be worth trillions of dollars in market cap one day.
You mentioned the major partnership distribution deals that you're doing with hardware makers. Perplexity is going to be pre-installed on Motorola phones. We've also reported that you are nearing a deal to get Perplexity pre-installed on Samsung phones, potentially replacing Google's Gemini assistant. Can you tell us a little bit more about these hardware partnerships and why they're important to your strategy?
Yeah, so towards the end of last year, we started thinking about how can we go beyond just an app on the phone to being a native assistant. The Google Assistant is a terrible experience. And so, but I think even they know it. That's why they're deprecating it themselves and trying to replace it with Gemini. So there's literally no assistant that you can have with the invoked with the action button or some gesture at the bottom of your screen, and just quickly talk to it in voice and ask questions and ask it to do stuff for you, like simply playing media or setting alarms, reminders, sending your emails, or setting smarter reminders. These things never even worked. And so we started to think about Perplexity more as an AI that's just helpful and right there for you all the time. Like I use the word cognitive operating system. You can fundamentally rethink the OS on all your devices if you think AI first. And so we started building the Android assistant. We put it out in January this year. It was super exciting. And a lot of OEMs saw that and they were like, damn, this is the coolest thing we've seen. And like, we just can completely like make Android like really much better. And so they started talking to us. So that's how the Motorola partnership came out. And that's how every other partnership that we're in talks with are like merging.
Can you confirm that Samsung is also going to be a partner?
Well, we're talking to a lot of people. So that's all I can say.
Is it difficult negotiating with phone makers who may not want to compromise their relationship with Google?
I thought so, and definitely Google has given us an extremely hard time. Like every time we're very close to signing a deal, like there's always like some calls from Mountain View that are being made. I don't know it's from where, but so they definitely don't want us to succeed. So, but we're not gonna I mean, if I thought like it's hard to succeed, we wouldn't be doing this company. So, I think it's good for the world that like finally someone is trying to like actually fight and compete against this distribution lock-ins that they have, and the DOJ case is going on, and I hope something good comes out of it. We've made our statements that how Android as an OS needs to be a lot more open, and Perplexity needs to be, not just Perplexity, by the way. I'm happy for ChatGPT or Claude or like Microsoft Copilot. Every contender in the space should be an option for the default AI, and Google cannot pay their way in to be the default, especially when they don't even have the best assistant.
And that's, one thing that's interesting about Perplexity is you offer many different AI models, right, on your platform. I want to also talk about, you mentioned how important it is to be accurate. And right now it is a tough market economically to produce accurate information. I know that firsthand as a journalist, right? You've had some issues with media companies in the past who have accused Perplexity of cribbing content. You've since struck revenue share deals with other major outlets like the LA Times. What do you think?
By the way, we're very interested in doing it with Bloomberg too. So
that's not my department. But what do you think is a sustainable business model here for accurate, truthful information to be produced at the same time that AI chatbots are bringing more of this information into their tools and not to publisher sites?
Yeah, so fundamentally, like sources and citations has been the forefront of our product. I think we've used LLMs as engines that are doing the reasoning and synthesis and summarization, but the actual authentic sources of content are always mentioned as citations in our UI, and I'm happy others are adopting that too. And we hope to drive traffic through those citations. We're never, by the way, I'm never gonna lie and say stuff like, oh, that we're still sending a lot of traffic and all this stuff that the bigger companies are trying to say. All that's definitely wrong. We've been very transparent that yes, there will be less traffic referrals from these UIs, and we're being open about it. on the other hand, what we're saying is like, okay, like imagine we make some revenue per query through some experimental work that we're doing on advertising, or even like say we upsell somebody, or like someone converts to becoming a pro user through a query that cited like a very valuable piece of content. We could potentially like just share the revenue with them. That was the model we came up with. Again, this is grounded in Jeff Bezos' thought of like your margins, my opportunity. Who has the least incentive to share any revenue with the publishers? It's Google. Like they drive traffic to others, but they take all the ad revenue, right? We don't have to have the margins they have, so we are happy sharing revenue with the publishers. So that was the origins of our publisher program. And we're happy that it's slowly expanding. It's not growing at a crazy pace because everybody wants to like, everybody's skeptical like how much revenue can be generated in these AI platforms at a query level. No one's really managed that. People are still doing the subscription-based monetization. But in future, you could imagine research agents, like these deep research agents can plug into like different data providers, and then the user can even like pay for accessing some things, just like they pay for these paywalls. And then the agent can like see through the paywalls because the user actually paid for it. And that revenue can be shared between the publisher and the AI. There's a lot of ways to do this. But the number one thing to understand here is like the intention to share revenue and the intention to be open about like, okay, there's definitely not going to be the old school style of like just traffic referrals from these new UIs. It's just how these tools work. And it's important to like also remember like the more you get cited in an AI tool, the branding for the source also like increases. Like I would argue that maybe years from now, it's probably better to be an authoritative source consistently in an AI product than ranking number 3 on the 10 Blue Link UI.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Arvind.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to the conversation. Another round of applause for Arvind Srinivas, please. We hope you all have enjoyed this morning here at Bloomberg Tech. It's lunchtime, but there's lots more ahead, so please stay with me for a moment. The general lunch is going to take place on the terrace, so to get there, please exit the doors and take the elevator up to the 4th floor. Our staff will be around to guide you as well. If you're registered for the roundtable, How AI is Changing Work, proudly sponsored by PwC, please take the elevators to the 3rd floor, to the Muse boardroom. We also have a special lunch session called When Chatbots Enter the Meeting, hosted by our management and work reporter and Otter AI's Sam Liang. If you're registered for that, please head to our Insight Enclave space on the 4th floor. And for members of our Innovators Circle, you will enjoy lunch and head to the 4th floor for your exclusive discussions. Please look for directional signs to the Innovator Hub, and a reminder, this session is invite only. Lastly, don't forget to try LM Arena's hugely popular platform for evaluating AI models. This is now on the terrace for the rest of the day. We have our own event leaderboard, so please vote over lunch, and we'll bring you the results at the end of the day. Thank you.